Have you ever wondered what ancient treasures, secrets, and mysteries the world has buried for thousands of years? Welcome to Unearthed Secrets, where we explore the most fascinating archaeological finds from across the globe. From golden tombs to mysterious clay figures, every artifact tells a story waiting to be discovered. Hit subscribe for 10 years of good luck, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Let's begin. The Gunditjmara Cauldron. The Gunditjmara Cauldron rests today under protective glass in the National Museum of Denmark, gleaming softly under carefully angled lights. Its silver surface reflects not only the room around it, but also the ghosts of millennia. To stand before it is to stand before a relic whose origin is uncertain, whose journey is mysterious, and whose meaning continues to invite quiet wonder. It is large, gleaming, intricate, and unlike anything else unearthed in Europe. When it was pulled from the ground in the late 19th century, it was as though the earth itself had decided to release one of its best-kept secrets. The cauldron is not intact in the way one might expect from such a vessel. Instead, it was found in pieces, its panels separated, as though dismantled deliberately before being offered to the earth. Even in fragments, the craftsmanship astonished those who first handled it. Silver of extraordinary purity had been hammered into broad sheets, each one decorated with raised images that seemed almost alive. Stags with curling antlers, gods with wide-staring eyes, warriors bearing spears, horned figures seated cross-legged as though mediating between worlds. All of these visions shimmer across its surface. To describe the cauldron simply as an artifact risks flattening the immense depth of imagination embedded in it. It is not merely a container for liquid. It is a text without letters, a story without a single word, a vast myth carved in silver. To follow its lines and curves is to drift into a world that mingled human ritual with divine presence, where feasting and sacrifice, birth and death, the hunt and the harvest, were all bound into the sacred fabric of life. Archaeologists uncovered the cauldron in 1891 in a peat bog near the small town of Gunditjmara in northern Denmark. Bogs throughout northern Europe are strange landscapes. To walk across them is to walk across centuries. They preserve things, wooden tools, textiles, human remains, in eerie perfection, shielding them from decay. Objects deposited into bogs often had sacred meaning. They were not lost accidentally, but placed intentionally, sometimes as offerings to gods, sometimes as a way of sealing away power. The Gunditjmara cauldron was one such offering, lowered into the dark waters, perhaps as a gift, perhaps as a sacrifice, perhaps as an act we may never fully name. When it was lifted out, archaeologists discovered 13 silver panels, along with fragments that once formed its circular body. Over time, scholars reconstructed the vessel, piecing together its mythic skin. It would have been immense, about 69 centimeters in diameter and 42 centimeters tall, large enough to hold nearly 30 gallons of liquid. Its scale alone made it extraordinary. Cauldrons were central in many Celtic myths. They were vessels of abundance, of rebirth, of divine nourishment. To make one of this size and of pure silver was to create not a tool of daily life, but a sacred centerpiece for ritual. Each panel tells its own story, yet together they weave a mythology that is both Celtic and something beyond. Consider the most famous scene, a horned god, seated cross-legged, holding a serpent in one hand and a torque in the other. Around him gather animals, a stag with elaborate antlers, a wolf, other creatures whose forms evoke both natural and supernatural presences. Many scholars have seen in this figure an early depiction of Cernunnos, the Celtic lord of wild things, master of animals, symbol of fertility and wealth. His gaze is calm, almost detached, yet filled with power. This panel alone has inspired endless interpretation. Is the god mediating between animals and humans? Is he guarding the boundary between life and death? Or is he presiding over the eternal cycle of nature itself? Other panels reveal scenes of warriors, sometimes marching in procession, sometimes plunging into what looks like a great vessel, perhaps the cauldron itself, before re-emerging in transformed form. This has led many to interpret the imagery as showing rebirth, a passage from death to new life, with the cauldron serving as the womb of renewal. Some panels show gods with outstretched arms, animals arrayed in symmetry, and powerful deities whose eyes seem to pierce across centuries. Each panel seems less like decoration and more like an entire myth condensed into metal. Yet for all its clarity of imagery, the cauldron refuses to explain itself. Scholars debate its origin. Was it crafted in Thrace, in modern-day Bulgaria, given its artistic parallels to Balkan silverwork? Or was it a Celtic commission, a sacred vessel made for chieftains of the northern tribes? The style suggests a blending of worlds. Celtic deities portrayed with craftsmanship more typical of the Balkans or even Eastern Mediterranean influences. The cauldron thus embodies cultural exchange, a vessel that may have traveled across continents before being laid to rest in Denmark. Imagine for a moment the journey. Silver mined perhaps in distant lands, hammered by hands trained in techniques passed down through generations, shaped into panels glowing with imagery, transported across rivers and seas, eventually arriving among Celtic peoples who recognized in its depictions something sacred. Imagine it placed at the heart of ceremonies, its great bowl filled with mead, with blood, with offerings to the gods. Imagine warriors dipping weapons into its depths, priests anointing themselves with its liquid, tribes gathering around it as the firelight caught the shimmer of silver and made the gods appear to move across its surface. Then, for reasons unknown, those same people dismantled it and consigned it to the bog. Was it an act of devotion, a final gift to the divine? Was it meant to hide the cauldron from enemies, protecting it by returning it to the earth? Or was it perhaps an act of fear, sealing away its power forever? We cannot know. We can only stand before it and feel the weight of mystery. To touch upon the symbolism of cauldrons in Celtic tradition is to enter a deep well. Cauldrons appear throughout myth as vessels of transformation. The cauldron of Dagda, in Irish lore, was said to provide endless food, a symbol of abundance. The cauldron of rebirth, in Welsh legend, could restore the dead to life. Cauldrons were not pots or cookware. They were cosmic symbols representing the womb, the grave, the source of knowledge, the mystery of the universe. To see such ideas hammered into silver in the Gunditjmara cauldron is to glimpse these myths made material. And yet, the cauldron is not only Celtic. Its Thracian connections hint at a wider horizon. Thrace was a land of warriors and craftsmen, where silver vessels with raised imagery were often created for nobles. The techniques used in the Gunditjmara cauldron, the repoussé method of hammering from behind, the intricate border designs, the stylized human forms, all suggest Thracian workmanship. Perhaps it was made there, traded or gifted to Celtic elites far to the north. If so, the cauldron becomes a traveler, carrying with it not just silver but stories, bridging cultures separated by distance. The bog preserved not only the cauldron, but also its enigma. Its panels are incomplete, its exact arrangement still debated. Did the figures form a continuous story around the vessel, or were they separate myths, each standing alone? Were they meant to be read in sequence, or contemplated as individual mysteries? Even the reconstruction on display today is in some sense hypothetical, the best effort of scholars piecing together the scattered parts. To drift through its imagery is to drift through time itself. One panel shows a bull being sacrificed, surrounded by figures whose postures suggest ritual. Another shows gods larger than mortals, their dominance expressed in size rather than gesture. Another shows a line of warriors plunging one by one into a vessel, perhaps being reborn through immersion. Every detail whispers of ritual, of myth, of a worldview where life and death were not opposites but partners in an endless cycle. The silver itself gleams with a softness that belies its strength. Silver was rare and precious, more so than gold in some regions, valued for its moonlight glow, its ability to reflect light, its associations with the divine feminine. To craft an entire cauldron of silver was to pour immense wealth into ritual form. It was not meant for everyday use. It was meant to bridge the human and the divine. Over the centuries, as scholars have studied it, the cauldron has become not only a relic of the past but a mirror for our own search for meaning. Some see in it evidence of shamanic practice, the horned god acting as mediator between worlds. Others see it as a political object, used by chieftains to assert divine authority. Others see it as a map of myth, a portable sanctuary of Celtic cosmology. All of these readings may be true, or none. The cauldron continues to resist being pinned down. Perhaps that is its true gift, not to explain but to evoke. To sit before it is to feel the quiet pull of an ancient imagination. The images do not explain themselves, but they invite the mind to wander, to connect, to sense what words cannot capture. Like a dream remembered upon waking, the cauldron is vivid yet elusive, clear yet impossible to fully hold. The Gunditjmara cauldron stands today as one of the greatest treasures of European prehistory, yet its greatness does not lie only in silver or in craft. It lies in its power to remind us that humans have always sought to make meaning, to give form to mystery, to tell stories not with words but with images that endure across centuries. It is a reminder that faith and myth and imagination are as real as any material thing, and that sometimes, the most lasting legacies are those that refuse to be fully understood. And so the cauldron rests, silent, gleaming, waiting. Its silver surface carries not only the reflections of those who peer into it today, but also the visions of those who once gathered around it in firelight, whispering prayers, chanting songs, offering gifts. It has outlasted them all. It will outlast us as well. And in that endurance, it continues to tell its story. Not in words but in silence, in silver, in the unending shimmer of myth. The copper axes of Otzi the Iceman. High in the silence of the Ötztal Alps, where peaks remain cloaked in snow, even as summer spreads across the valleys, the air thins into a crystalline stillness. It is here, amid the rolling glaciers and jagged ridges, that time preserved a man and his belongings for more than 5,000 years. He is known to us today as Otzi the Iceman, the oldest naturally frozen mummy of Europe, and among the items he carried, one stood out above the rest, a copper axe. It gleamed faintly when first uncovered, still bound to its wooden haft, its blade hammered into shape by hands that lived and worked long before the world knew kings, cities, or empires. The copper axe is no ordinary artifact. It is, in truth, a quiet revolution caught in metal, for within its small battered frame lies the evidence of human transition, from stone to metal, from survival to mastery, from the rhythms of the natural world to the shaping of it by fire. As we drift slowly through this story, we will follow the axe not only as a tool, but as a symbol, one that carries within it the life of a man, the knowledge of his people, and the whisper of an age on the cusp of change. Otzi's axe begins its story deep beneath the mountains. Somewhere far from where he perished, seams of copper ore were pried from the living rock. Unlike stone, copper did not fracture and splinter when struck. Instead, when heated in fire and hammered with persistence, it transformed into something new, malleable, sharp, and enduring. To craft an axe blade from copper was no simple task. First, the ore had to be gathered, often carried from mines dug into remote hillsides, perhaps traded across valleys by communities bound together in fragile networks of trust. Then came the smelting, an art as close to alchemy as anything the ancient world had known. Ore was roasted, charcoal consumed, and flames coaxed into life until metal wept from stone. The blade that Otzi carried was hammered rather than cast, its form shaped through blows and reheating, each strike ringing out against an anvil stone, each pass hardening its edge. The smith who made it likely worked with a reverence born of necessity. Copper was precious, rare compared to the common stones that had shaped humanity's tools for millennia. To hold such a weapon was not only to carry utility, it was to wield status. Imagine Otzi himself, moving through the alpine passes, around his waist a belt of leather. At his side, a quiver of arrows, their shafts straightened with care, their points still sharpened flint rather than metal, and in his hand, the copper axe, its head bound securely to a yew wood handle, fixed with birch tar pitch and thongs of leather. The weight of it differed from stone, balanced differently, catching the light when the sun slipped over ridges. This axe was not just for felling branches or cutting through underbrush. It was, in all likelihood, also a weapon and a symbol. For to own an axe of copper in Otzi's time was to stand apart. Studies of his remains suggest he was no common wanderer, no aimless traveler lost in the snows. His tattoos, his toolkit, and above all his copper blade, hint at someone of importance, perhaps a chieftain, perhaps a man tasked with leading or protecting his community. And yet, in the end he was found alone, his body slowly surrendering to the ice, his axe resting beside him, waiting centuries for the snow to loosen its grip. The axe, when uncovered, astonished archaeologists. Until that moment in 1991, when hikers stumbled across his body protruding from melting ice, no intact copper axe of that age had been found in Europe. Its survival was a miracle of circumstance. The cold had sealed it away, protecting the wooden haft from decay, preserving the leather bindings, and leaving the copper blade tarnished but whole. When researchers held it in their hands for the first time, it was as if time itself had been breached. Analysis of the copper revealed another layer to its tale. Isotopic studies traced its origins not to the immediate Alps where Otzi died, but to ores from what is now Tuscany, hundreds of kilometers away. This meant that the axe had traveled, whether through trade or as a personal possession, across vast distances. Here was evidence that networks of exchange already spanned Europe long before recorded history. A single object became proof of connection, of movement, of cultures reaching across mountains and valleys to share resources and knowledge. Picture for a moment the long line of people who may have handled the metal before it became an axe. A miner, his hands stained with dust, pried ore from rock. A smelter, sweating before the fire, coaxed molten metal from the furnace. A smith, hammer ringing against stone, shaped the blade, quenched it, and polished it. Perhaps a trader then passed it on, bundled with salt or hides, until at last it reached Otzi or his community. Every hand left a trace, invisible yet enduring, layered into the blade like echoes. And then, one day, the axe became his. The significance of this tool expands beyond craftsmanship. To carry copper was to step into a new age. Stone tools had served humanity for millions of years, shaping wood, hunting game, cutting hides. But stone was fragile, its edges chipped and worn away with use. Copper, though softer than later bronze or iron, offered an entirely different experience. It could be reshaped when dulled, hammered back to sharpness, and made into forms stone could never quite achieve. To the people of Otzi's world, the gleam of metal must have seemed alive, a gift of the earth transformed by fire into something almost divine, and yet the axe did not save him. When Otzi's body was studied, it revealed the story of his final days. He had eaten shortly before death, remnants of grain and ibex meat still in his stomach. He bore wounds, an arrow lodged in his shoulder, deep cuts on his hands. He had been pursued, injured, and struck down. His death was violent, sudden, and the axe lay beside him, not as salvation, but as a companion into stillness. Centuries passed, glaciers shifting, snowstorms burying and releasing his body, until finally, in our own time, he was seen again. The axe was lifted from the ice, studied under modern light, its copper surface etched with corrosion, its wood dried but intact. In museums today, one can look upon it and see more than a tool. It is the convergence of technology, status, trade, and mortality. It is the story of a man who lived in a world without writing, whose very existence would have been lost to time had the ice not chosen to remember him. As we linger on this object, the copper itself speaks of endurance. It gleamed then, and though tarnished now, it still gleams faintly under glass. The U-handle, curved by ancient hands, still bears the marks of shaping. The bindings of leather and pitch, though fragile, remain in place. Each detail whispers of daily life, 5,000 years ago, the skills of binding, the knowledge of wood, the understanding of adhesives and hafting. There is something profoundly intimate about this survival. To gaze at the axe is to look directly at a tool once held, once swung, once relied upon. Unlike monumental ruins or distant texts, it carries the imprint of touch, of weight, of familiarity. It is less the story of distant gods, and more the story of a single man and his need to endure in a harsh and uncertain world. And still, beyond the personal, the axe reflects the age of transition it represents. Soon after Ötzi's time, the use of copper spread widely, followed by the discovery that alloying it with tin created bronze, a harder, more resilient metal that would define entire civilizations. The humble axe of Ötzi stands at the threshold of that transformation, both primitive and advanced, fragile and revolutionary. Today, in quiet museums where Ötzi rests within chilled chambers, his axe lies close by, never separated from him even in death. Visitors press against the glass, staring at the green surface of the blade, perhaps unaware of the immense journey it represents. It is not merely a tool, it is a story forged in fire, carried by a man across mountains, and delivered by chance into our hands millennia later. In the end, the copper axe is both object and symbol. It is the weight of survival, the reach of human ingenuity, the thread of trade binding communities, and the final companion of a man whose frozen body teaches us still. When the wind howls across the Alps, sweeping snow over ridges where he once walked, it is not difficult to imagine the glint of copper in the sun, flashing for a brief instant before disappearing again into shadow. The Ratia Cave Offerings. Deep in the rugged heart of the Alps, where stone ridges rise in jagged silhouettes against pale skies, and icy streams rush downward through ravines worn by ages, there lies a cave whose story has never fully faded. To enter this place in the imagination is to step into the hush of the Iron Age, where flickering torchlight once touched the damp walls, and where the breath of countless supplicants mingled with the cool air that still seeps up from hidden springs. The cave is known to us now as the Ratia site, a sanctuary of offerings where water, stone, and human longing came together in rituals so enduring that even the passing of 2,000 years cannot erase them. The objects recovered there, humble and yet haunting, carry the quiet echo of prayers whispered in languages that no longer sound across the valleys. Picture the landscape first, before the people. The Alps in antiquity were no less formidable than they are today. Their ridges crowned in snow, their passes treacherous, and their meadows brief moments of gentleness between forests and stone. In the Iron Age, before the dominance of Rome and its wide roads, these mountains were barriers and shelters, obstacles and shrines. A people we call the Ratia lived here, inheritors of traditions from both Celtic and Etruscan worlds, speaking tongues that blended and shifted like streams flowing together. To them, the cave was not merely a hollow in the rock but a mouth to the underworld, a sacred place where the boundary between the mortal and divine thinned. Archaeologists who uncovered the Ratia cave offerings found layers of objects deposited across centuries. At first glance, they seemed scattered. Fragments of pottery, rusted blades, bronze ornaments, bones of animals, but as the deposits were studied, a pattern emerged. These were not discards, not waste thrown away in secret hollows, but gifts deliberately placed into the earth. The well at the cave's center was especially telling. Here the water pooled in a dark basin, fed by unseen veins of the mountain. Into this living spring, the people cast their treasures. They believed perhaps that what was surrendered to the water traveled downward to the gods beneath. One can imagine the ritual. The people gather at dusk, climbing the rocky path in silence. The air is damp, heavy with the smell of pine resin from torches, the sound of dripping echoing from the cave ahead. Elders walk first, bearing bowls carved from wood, vessels of clay, the weight of bronze pins and blades in their hands. Behind them, younger men carry lambs or goats, their hooves striking unevenly on the stone. Women follow, some with baskets of grain, some with woven fabrics dyed in earthy hues. All are hushed, for they are about to enter a place set apart from the ordinary, a place where voices must lower lest the unseen hear displeasure. At the threshold, they pause. Smoke curls upward as torches gutter, and shadows leap across the cave walls, forming shapes that could almost be spirits themselves. Then slowly they proceed inward. The sound of water greets them. The well, the spring, the dark mirror into which so many offerings will fall. One by one, they approach. A bronze axe, small, ceremonial, its edge dulled, is lifted, and then let slip from the hand. It falls with a splash, vanishing into the depths. A clay cup, finely made, is shattered deliberately, its fragments cast into the pool. A goat is led forward, its throat cut quickly, the blood mixed with water before the body itself is surrendered. Each act is solemn, each gesture a petition for fertility, for safety and travel, for healing, for the favor of gods who dwell beneath stone. As the centuries pass, the offerings accumulate. The cave becomes layered with memory, with rust and bone and shards. Later generations return, sensing the sanctity carved out by their ancestors. They add their own marks, iron tools, coins from traders who have crossed distant lands, beads of glass whose colors still glow faintly, even after burial. The well becomes a deep archive of faith, a record not of words but of actions, a litany of devotion spoken in objects. It is not only what was given, but how it was given that matters. Some of the artifacts bear signs of intentional breaking, as if the people wished to kill the object before surrendering it. A blade snapped, a vessel cracked, a figure defaced. This was no careless destruction but a symbolic release. Once broken, the item no longer belonged to the living world, but was ready to belong to the gods. This idea of ritual killing of objects recurs across Europe in the Iron Age, yet here in the cave it takes on a particular resonance, for the broken things vanish into the dark waters, beyond the reach of recovery. They were not only killed but hidden, never again to serve human hands. Standing in the cave now, centuries later, one would see none of this ceremony, only the aftermath. The drip of water is steady, the air still cold and close, the smell of earth sharp, but the objects remain, heavy with the memory of touch. A bronze fibula that once fastened a cloak, a knife with a handle long decayed, a handful of animal bones blackened with age. Each of these tells of lives lived in fragile landscapes, where survival demanded not only skill but also the goodwill of unseen powers. The Reti themselves would later be absorbed into the Roman world. Their lands became provinces, their gods reshaped into Roman forms, their language dwindled. But the cave kept its secrets, the deposits preserved beneath layers of sediment and stone. When the modern world uncovered them, it was not with torchlight, but with careful excavation, brushes and sieves replacing chants and prayers. And yet the archaeologists too felt the echo. As they lifted each object from the soil, they were handling not refuse but messages meant for the divine. Consider the meaning of water in this ritual. In mountain cultures, springs were lifelines, sources of purity and survival. To give into the water was to acknowledge its power, to treat it not as mere resource but as living presence. The well in the cave was not only a hole in the ground but an axis, a passageway. Even today there are alpine traditions of tossing coins into fountains, of leaving ribbons by streams, of acknowledging that flowing water carries wishes. The Redia cave offerings are the deep ancestor of these gestures, magnified and solemn. And consider the cave itself, the darkness that both conceals and reveals. In many cultures, caves were womb-like, places of rebirth, or else they were mouths of the underworld, thresholds to the realm of ancestors. For the Redia, this cave may have been both. By leaving their offerings within, they gave their gods a place to dwell, but they also gave themselves a place of memory, a guarantee that their prayers would not vanish into open air, but remain anchored in stone. When we reflect on this, the imagination lingers on small details. A woman kneeling by the pool, lowering a necklace into its surface. Did her hands tremble as she let it slip away? Did she whisper a child's name, asking the gods for health? A man, breaking the tip of his spear before tossing it into the dark. Was he asking for victory or for safe return from war? A boy, watching animals sacrificed, the smoke filling his nose, the blood sinking into the water. Was he afraid, or did he feel awe, sensing that the gods were near? These moments are lost to history, yet they hover still in the silence of the cave. What makes the Ratia offering so powerful to contemplate is not only their antiquity, but their intimacy. These were not grand treasures of kings or empires, but the simple goods of mountain people. A fibula pin is not gold, yet it once clasped a cloak that shielded against the cold. A pottery shard is not jewel, yet it once held the food that sustained a family. By giving these things away, the people gave a part of themselves. They sought favor not with riches alone, but with what mattered in daily life. In this sense, the cave is a record of humanity, not at its most extravagant, but at its most earnest, And so, across thousands of years, the Ratia cave still whispers. Its offerings tell us that long before written prayers, long before churches and temples rose, people already knew the weight of devotion. They already knew the longing for safety, the fear of loss, the hope for abundance. They found ways to embody these desires, to place them in objects and surrender them into mystery. In the end, what remains is not only the rusted iron or the broken pottery, but the gesture itself, repeated generation after generation, until the cave was full of silent prayers carried by stone and water into eternity. The Archaeological urns. In the deep south of India, far from the great rivers of the north that birthed early kingdoms, there lies a quiet village near the banks of the Tamirabharani River. The place is called Archaeological. To walk across its fields today, you would see nothing remarkable at first, just the same stretches of red soil, scrub and farmland that spread across much of Tamil Nadu. But beneath this soil, resting silently for thousands of years, lies one of the most mysterious burial grounds of the ancient world. It was here, over a century ago, that farmers digging in their fields stumbled upon clay pots of unusual size. These were not the small vessels used for storing grain, or water, or oil. They were taller, broader, heavy-walled urns, large enough to contain the bones of the dead. And as the earth was disturbed, it revealed not just one or two, but hundreds upon hundreds of such burial urns, each resting in silence, each holding human remains and grave goods, whispering of a civilization lost to memory. Archaeologists later counted more than 1,600 urns, buried carefully in rows across this site. Each urn was sealed with a lid, and inside lay fragments of skeletons, along with weapons, ornaments, pottery, and tools of daily life. These were not hasty burials. They were deliberate, ritualistic, ceremonial. Something in this culture demanded that the dead be encased in clay and placed in the earth, as if their spirits required protection, or perhaps as if the living feared their return. The soil here is red and iron-rich, and when the sun strikes it, it glows with an ancient heat. Imagine, thousands of years ago, people moving slowly across these fields, carrying their dead. The urns themselves were shaped with care. Tall, rounded vessels with strong walls, wide mouths, and domed lids. To fire such vessels required great skill and powerful kilns, suggesting that pottery was an advanced craft in this community. And when the urns were sealed, the skeletons inside were not alone. Alongside them were bronze ornaments, weapons of copper, iron tools, beads of semi-precious stones, and sometimes even gold. This was no poor community of scattered villagers. This was a thriving, organized settlement, one that believed in elaborate rituals for the dead. What makes Archaeological so fascinating is how old it is. Early excavations in the late 19th century suggested that these urns belonged to a period as early as 1000 BCE. Some scholars even argue for older dates, suggesting that parts of the burial ground could go back to 1500 BCE or earlier, placing it among the oldest known organized cemeteries in the entire Indian subcontinent. Long before the great dynasties of South India rose, long before the Sangam poets sang of kings and battles, the people of Archaeological were burying their dead in this way. The urns were not uniform. Some contained full skeletons crouched in fetal positions, suggesting beliefs in rebirth or return to the womb of the earth. Others contained only skulls, or jawbones, or bundles of cremated ash, hinting at multiple funerary traditions practiced by the same community. A few urns even contained the remains of children, wrapped with care, and buried with beads or bangles. In the presence of these burials, one feels both the fragility and the endurance of human life across millennia. The objects inside the urns speak as loudly as the bones themselves. Bronze mirrors, razor blades, ornaments of shell, and iron spearheads have all been uncovered here. There were terracotta figurines of animals, perhaps tokens meant to accompany the dead into the afterlife. Some urns contained rice husks, preserved across the centuries, offerings of food for the journey beyond. To bury food with the dead is to believe they travel onward into another place. To bury weapons is to believe they will fight there too. It is impossible to stand in Archaeological, surrounded by so many burials, without feeling that this was a society deeply concerned with life after death. Unlike some cultures where burials are sparse, here the sheer density of urns suggests that burial was not reserved for kings or elites alone. Ordinary men, women, and children were placed into urns and given grave goods, as though every life had value, and every soul required safe passage. And yet, this was not a simple, isolated village. Among the urns, archaeologists discovered beads of lapis lazuli, a deep blue stone that could only have come from Afghanistan, thousands of kilometers away. They found carnelian beads, linked to trade routes stretching across the Indus Valley and beyond. They found bronze and iron, showing that metallurgy was well established. This was not a forgotten corner of the ancient world, it was a hub, a participant in the great networks of exchange and culture that stretched across early Asia. One of the most extraordinary discoveries at Archaeological came in 2004 when excavators uncovered a skeleton inside a large urn that was still intact. Resting alongside the bones was a bronze diadem, a kind of crown or headband, decorated with delicate designs. Whoever this person was, they had been honored with a symbol of authority. Around the skeleton were bronze vessels, iron implements, and ornaments of gold. This was no ordinary burial. This was the resting place of someone revered, perhaps a leader, perhaps a priest, perhaps both. The diadem shone dimly even after thousands of years underground, a reminder that power and prestige were buried here too. As one moves slowly across the Archaeological fields, one begins to wonder, what stories lie hidden in the urns that remain unexcavated? Archaeologists estimate that far more burials still lie beneath the earth, untouched. If more urns are uncovered, we may find even clearer evidence of how this society lived, what gods they worshipped, how they traded, and how they imagined the world after death. The silence of Archaeological is heavy, but not empty. It is the silence of thousands of voices buried, each with its own tale. Were these people Tamil speakers? Proto-Dravidians? Were they part of the same culture that later produced the Sangam literature of ancient Tamilakam? Or were they older still, belonging to a vanished Bronze Age world whose memory faded before recorded history began? The urns themselves seem to hold answers just beyond reach. Their clay surfaces are unmarked by writing, for these people left no known script. They did not carve long inscriptions to announce who they were. Instead, they let their burials speak for them. Their technology, bronze, iron, beads, terracotta, reveals sophistication. Their careful ritual burials reveal belief, but their language, their myths, their songs remain silent, and yet something universal emerges here. To walk among the urns is to realize that death has always bound humanity together. Whether in India, Mesopotamia, Egypt, or Europe, ancient people sought ways to give meaning to death. Some built pyramids, some raised stone circles, some carved tombs in cliffs, and here, in the quiet fields of Archaeological, they shaped clay into vessels large enough to hold human bodies, and they buried them beneath the earth, generation after generation. What is striking is not just the scale of this burial ground, but the sense of community it conveys. Over centuries, the people of Archaeological must have returned again and again to these fields to bury their dead. Children grew up watching their elders prepare urns. Families must have carried the bodies of loved ones here, chanting, weeping, placing offerings, sealing the clay lids. This was not a single event, but a tradition lasting lifetimes, a thread of continuity binding the living to the dead. Even today, when the urns are displayed in museums, their presence is unsettling. Some stand nearly 3 feet tall, their red-brown clay bearing the marks of hands that shaped them 3,000 years ago. When you peer inside, you see fragments of bones, femurs, ribs, skulls, reduced to chalky whiteness but still recognizable as human. The effect is profound. Here lies a person, once alive, now dust, yet preserved in this clay womb across millennia. The Archaeological urns remind us that India's ancient past is far older and more complex than many realize. Long before the Mauryas, before the Cholas and Pandyas, there were people here making metal, trading across continents, burying their dead in ceremonies of dignity and care. The fields hold their secret still, layer upon layer of clay, bone and silence. And so, as night falls over the Tamira Bharani, the fields darken. The river flows quietly nearby, as it has for thousands of years. Beneath the earth, urns still sleep, sealed and silent. The clay holds the weight of memory, and the bones inside are at peace. But for us who stand above them, there remains a whisper, a call to remember, to imagine, to wonder at the lives that once walked here, before vanishing into history, leaving behind only urns to tell their tale. The Saliogos settlement. The sea in the Aegean has always carried whispers, long before the great sails of triremes, long before temples of white marble rose upon cliffs, even before myths of gods and heroes found their way into song. If one were to drift across its waters, somewhere between the islands of Paros and Antiparos, the waves would lap against a place that does not stand tall, nor does it shine with marble, nor with gold, but carries in its soil the faint traces of a story almost forgotten. This is the story of Saliogos, a settlement so small, so modest, that it could be passed without ever being noticed. Yet it holds within it the very roots of what would become one of the world's most famous ancient cultures, the Cycladic. When archaeologists first began to dig upon this low islet, they did not expect much. From above it seemed little more than a rock rising out of the waters, wind-swept and scrubby, the kind of place goats might graze and fishermen might rest for a while before heading back to sea. Yet as the soil gave way, layer by layer, it revealed fragments of pottery, stone tools, bones of animals, and beneath all these, the outlines of homes once lived in by the very earliest farmers of these islands. The Saliagos settlement belongs to a time around 5000 to 4500 BCE, an age before palaces, before written words, even before metal was much known. It belongs to the Neolithic, when people first carried seeds across the sea, when sheep and goats were ferried by boat to graze upon new islands, when the rhythms of agriculture began to replace the older rhythms of the hunt. The people who came here were not conquerors, they were not warriors with bronze blades, they were families, carrying with them memory, survival, and hope. Their boats, simple but sturdy, had crossed the waters of the Cyclades, perhaps from Crete, perhaps from mainland Greece, perhaps from even farther beyond. What mattered most was that here, on this little stretch of land, they found a place where crops could grow, where the soil, though thin, was enough to feed barley, lentils, and peas, and where the surrounding sea could be fished for sustenance. Life on Saliagos was humble but deliberate. Imagine waking in the morning, the sound of waves against the rocks, the bleating of goats just outside. The houses were built from stone, their walls low but thick, their roofs thatched with reeds or brush. Inside, fires smoldered on stone hearths. Clay pots were set upon them, filled with boiling grains, fish stews or lentil soups. There were no grand tools of metal, only stone, polished with care, obsidian blades sharp as glass, and grinding stones that worked day after day to turn harvested grain into flour. The obsidian was special. It did not come from Saliagos itself. Its black sheen told of voyages across the Aegean, for obsidian comes from the island of Melos, far to the west. The people of Saliagos had crossed waters or traded with others who had, and in their hands, these stones became knives, scrapers, arrowheads. This tells us that even at this early stage, life here was not isolated. There were networks, connections, small exchanges that linked the Cyclades into a quiet web of contact. When bones were found at Saliagos, they told stories of both life and death. There were the bones of sheep, goats, and pigs, animals herded and raised for food. There were also the bones of fish, of sea urchins cracked open, of shellfish gathered from shallow waters. The people here lived with the sea as much as with the land. But there were also human remains, burials of the settlement's inhabitants, sometimes within the houses themselves, as if the dead remained among the living. The pottery at Saliagos is what makes the settlement especially remarkable. Unlike the rough, undecorated wares of earlier times, the clay vessels here carried white on dark designs, painted in swirling, linear motifs. Some were bowls, some jars, some serving vessels. Their decoration was simple yet intentional, giving a glimpse into a people who sought not just utility but also beauty in the everyday. A pot was not only for carrying food, it was for carrying meaning, for marking identity, for reflecting care and craft. Perhaps the most curious finds of all are the figurines. From the soil emerged small, stylized human forms, carved from marble. They were not realistic portraits. Their features were abstract, reduced to essential shapes, their arms folded, their bodies flattened into almost geometric forms. These figurines are the ancestors of the more famous Cycladic statues that would appear millennia later, those haunting marble figures that inspired modern artists like Picasso and Modigliani. Yet here, in Saliagos, we see their earliest beginnings, a culture already shaping the human form into symbols that lay somewhere between the sacred and the everyday. One figurine in particular stands out, the so-called Fat Lady of Saliagos. Unlike the slim, folded-armed Cycladic figures of later times, this one was fuller, rounder, with ample curves. She is thought to represent fertility, perhaps a goddess, perhaps simply a woman whose form embodied nourishment and life. To hold this figurine would have been to hold a prayer in stone, a wish for abundance, for successful harvests, for continuity of the community. The settlement was not large. Perhaps 100 people lived here at most. But their lives, though simple, were threaded with meaning. Every seed they planted was an act of faith. Every figurine carved was a reflection of belief. Every crossing to another island for obsidian or for shells was a small step in weaving the network that would eventually give rise to the Cycladic civilization. Over time, the people of Saliagos built walls, not high fortifications, but low enclosures, perhaps to protect their animals, perhaps to mark boundaries. They created middens where the remains of meals piled up, layer upon layer of shells and bones, and slowly, as centuries passed, the settlement faded. Perhaps the soil grew thin, perhaps the sea encroached, perhaps people moved on to larger, more fertile islands. By 4500 BCE, Saliagos was abandoned. Its houses crumbled, its figurines lay buried, its pots shattered and scattered. Yet what was left behind became a time capsule. Thousands of years later, when archaeologists uncovered it in the 1960s, they found one of the earliest farming communities in the entire Cyclades. Without Saliagos, we might not know when the islands first became home to settled life. We might imagine them empty until the Bronze Age, when the famous cyclitic figurines appeared, but Saligos whispers otherwise. It shows us the deep roots of a culture, quiet, humble, but steady. If you stand upon the islet today, the sea winds still sweep across it, and the sound of waves against the rocks still echoes. You would see little that reveals its story, for most of it remains beneath the soil, hidden in layers. But if you close your eyes, you might hear the grinding of grain upon stone, the crackle of fire in a hearth, the laughter of children chasing goats through scrub, the rhythmic sound of paddles dipping into the Aegean as boats set out toward distant islands. The Saligos settlement is more than just ruins. It is the memory of a beginning, the moment when people, carried by hope and necessity, turned islands of rock into homes, when they planted seeds into soil that had never known crops before, when they carved figures from marble that would echo across millennia. It is the whisper of humanity's first steps into a life shaped by farming, community, and belief on the scattered stones of the Cyclades. And though it was small, though it was forgotten for thousands of years, though its houses are long vanished, its story lingers like the sea air, quiet, constant, shaping the very roots of civilization that would one day shine far brighter upon the stage of history. Saligos teaches us that greatness does not begin with palaces or kings. Sometimes it begins with a handful of families, with stone houses low against the wind, with clay pots painted in simple designs, with figurines carved to honor life. It begins with the steady persistence of people choosing to stay, to plant, to create, and to believe. And in that persistence, upon a small islet between two larger islands, the seeds of Cycladic culture were sown, seeds that would grow, transform, and endure in ways the people of Salios could never have imagined, yet in ways we can still trace back to their quiet lives upon the Aegean shore. The Vrabla Ditch Settlement. The story of the Vrabla settlement begins quietly, in the soft cradle of the Danube plains, where rolling fields stretch between low hills and forests that whisper with ancient winds. Today, it is a place that few beyond archaeologists and local farmers know about, but in the deep Neolithic past, it was something remarkable. A fortified village, enclosed by great ditches, where people of an early farming world gathered, built, lived, and buried their dead. Its story is written not in words, but in the slow traces carved into soil, the ghost of ditches, the outline of longhouses, and fragments of pottery scattered like a quiet language waiting to be read. When we speak of Neolithic Europe, we often imagine the slow transformation from hunting and gathering into settled farming life. Families who once roamed forests following herds and rivers instead began to claim patches of earth, clearing them, sowing seeds, harvesting grain, and tethering animals. In this transformation lay not only sustenance but also the seeds of society, ritual, and conflict. Vrabla, in what is now Slovakia, is one of the most important sites to show us how far those early farmers went, how they planned, and perhaps even how they feared. The settlement is thought to have been at its peak around 5000 to 4800 BCE, during the linear pottery culture, or LBK, as archaeologists often call it. The LBK culture stretched widely across Central Europe, leaving behind longhouses, decorated pottery, and traces of communities. Yet Vrabla stands out because of its scale and its strange system of defenses. Nearly 50 hectares of land were enclosed by a network of ditches, some cut deep into the soil. The earth removed from those ditches might have formed banks, palisades, or barriers. It was as though this Neolithic farming village, thousands of years before cities or castles, had already imagined the need for walls. When archaeologists first uncovered the ditches, they puzzled over their meaning. Were they meant to protect against enemies? Were they symbols of separation, boundaries between the sacred and the everyday? Or were they markers of community identity, a way to say, "Here we live, and this is ours"? The soil cannot speak, but the arrangement suggests something both practical and ritual. The ditches encircle the settlement in overlapping arcs, forming an almost labyrinthine outline. To pass through them must have felt significant, a crossing from one world into another. Within the ditches, longhouses once stood. These were the hallmark of the LBK culture. Timber-framed buildings, elongated like ships, with walls of wattle and daub. Some may have stretched up to 30 meters long. They were not only homes but centers of family life, places where people ground grain, cooked food, tended children, and told stories by firelight. The rhythm of daily life echoed within those walls, the grinding of stone querns, the clatter of pottery, the smell of smoke and stewing grain. But beneath this ordinary life, the archaeologists at Vrabla found something more somber. In the ditches, skeletal remains were uncovered, people buried hurriedly, some in strange positions, some perhaps discarded rather than laid to rest. This suggests a darker chapter. The ditch was not merely a barrier, but also a place where the dead, or the unwanted, were cast. Some of the remains showed signs of violence, perhaps the result of raids, conflict, or internal tensions within the community. These are not the carefully arranged burials found in cemeteries, but bones tangled in mud, hinting at stories we will never fully know. Yet we should not imagine only violence or fear. The Vrabla settlement also reveals ritual depth. Offerings of pottery, tools, and food were likely deposited into the earth, connecting the living with ancestors and deities. For Neolithic people, the land was alive, and ditches could serve as channels between worlds. A plowed field was not just for harvest, it was sacred, bound up with fertility, cycles of life, and the spirits that watched over them. To cut into the earth with such great effort, as they did at Vrabla, must have been more than defense. It was participation in a dialogue with forces unseen. Walking slowly through this vanished place in the mind's eye, one might picture narrow paths weaving between houses, the sound of animals penned nearby, children chasing each other in the dust. Smoke rises from hearths, drifting into the air above the enclosure. At the edges, where the ditch yawns open, shadows collect. Perhaps villagers approach the rim carrying offerings. Perhaps a body, wrapped hastily, is lowered into the soil. Perhaps voices chant as night gathers. The ditch watches silently, holding memory long after the people themselves are gone. Excavations of Vrabla have revealed over 300 houses across different phases of settlement, suggesting that this was no small village, but one of the largest LBK sites known. Populations may have reached into the thousands. To feed so many required cooperation, shared labor, and organization. Vast fields of wheat and barley must have spread around the enclosure. Cattle, goats, and pigs grazed nearby. Storage pits within the settlement likely held surpluses of grain, each family storing their harvests for winter. And yet, with size came strain. Larger communities meant disputes, tensions over resources, and perhaps rivalries that erupted in violence. The ditch walls whisper of both unity and division. The pottery of Vrabla, like that of other LBK sites, is decorated with delicate linear bands, carefully incised and sometimes filled with white paste to stand out. These vessels carried food, drink, and offerings. Each curve and line was more than design, it was identity, a shared style connecting people across hundreds of kilometers. Pottery was fragile, yet pieces endure, and archaeologists reconstruct them like puzzles, holding in their hands the artistry of lives long gone. Imagine one such vessel, lifted from the ditch where it was deposited 5,000 years ago, its rim chipped, its pattern still faintly visible. It once sat by a hearth, filled with grain porridge or beer brewed from barley. Now it rests in silence, but it carries echoes of human hands. As centuries passed, the Vrabli settlement grew, shifted, and eventually declined. The longhouses fell, ditches filled with silt, fields reclaimed by nature. Yet the memory of its presence lingered in the soil. Generations later, others may have walked over its buried lines without knowing what lay beneath. Only in the modern era, with careful excavation, did the outlines re-emerge like shadows on the earth. What makes Vrabli so haunting today is how much it reminds us of ourselves. Here were people who built defenses, who struggled with violence and belonging, who invested effort into community and ritual. Their world was different in tools, but familiar in pattern. The desire to belong, to protect, to understand the sacred, that has not left humanity. The ditches of Vrabli, silent now, once roared with life, and in them we can glimpse both the fragility and strength of human community. As one lets the imagination linger there, at the rim of an ancient Neolithic ditch, there is a sense of standing between times. The wind carries whispers of wheat brushing together, of cattle lowing, of human voices speaking a language no longer known. The ditch yawns, a dark arc in the soil, filled with centuries of silence, and yet it remains a line between worlds, between the living and the dead, between past and present, between what we know and what we will never fully uncover. The Vrabli ditch settlement, once a thriving Neolithic village, endures not in stone walls or monuments, but in subtle traces, fragile bones, and forgotten ditches. Its story, carried forward by archaeologists, is both ordinary and profound. A community of farmers, thousands of years ago, trying to live, to protect, to worship, and to endure in a world that was as uncertain for them as it is for us. And so the fields of Slovakia hold their memory, a memory that lingers quietly, waiting for those who pause to listen. The AI revealed Mesopotamian sites. Beneath the soils of Iraq, across wide plains and winding rivers that once nurtured the first cities, there are patterns invisible to the wandering eye but etched into the landscape like faint scars. Lines, mounds, ghostly rectangles of earth, almost forgotten by time. For centuries, many of these shapes slumbered unseen, hidden beneath shifting sands, modern roads, and tilled fields. Yet, from far above, in the quiet gaze of satellites, they have begun to reappear. Through the patient algorithms of artificial intelligence, forgotten Mesopotamian sites now whisper again, inviting us into a world older than writing itself. The story of these revelations is not one of sudden discovery, but of patient unfolding. Long ago, scholars pieced together fragments of ancient Mesopotamia from clay tablets, ruined ziggurats, and broken walls. They could only glimpse the edges of vast civilizations: the Sumerians who built the first cities, the Akkadians who forged empires, the Babylonians who wrote in cuneiform, and the Assyrians whose kings commanded armies across deserts. Yet outside those monumental centers lay countless villages, farms, shrines, canals, and sacred places, quietly sustaining the grand cities. These left faint traces in the soil, traces nearly impossible to see from the ground. It was only when the modern eye moved skyward that these traces grew visible. Early aerial photography hinted at outlines, but now, with the precision of satellites orbiting far above, the Earth is mapped in astonishing detail, and within those vast maps, AI finds what the human mind might overlook. Algorithms trained to detect unnatural shapes read the difference between a natural hill and the buried outline of a temple foundation. They noticed circles where wells once stood, lines where canals guided water, and dark shadows where ditches once ringed villages. Among these discoveries are hundreds of hidden sites across Iraq. Some are small, a ring of earth no larger than a field, perhaps the remains of a farming village. Others stretch wider, hinting at forgotten cities, whose names never reached the tablets of history. And some suggest places of devotion, sacred to people whose prayers were carried by wind long before the first ziggurat towered over the land. To imagine these sites as they once were is to enter a quiet dream. The plains of Mesopotamia, nourished by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, carried a rhythm of life bound to water. Along the canals, reeds grew thick, bending in the breeze. Villagers built mud brick homes, their walls soft to the touch and easily remade when rains washed them away. At dawn, farmers led oxen to fields, pressing wooden plows into soil, darkened by river silt. Children played near wells, their laughter rising like birdsong. Women baked bread in clay ovens, the smell carrying through courtyards. At dusk, priests lifted offerings to unseen gods, their words fading into the still air. What remains now of that world are faint discolorations in the soil. Yet through AI's perception, they are reawakened, their forms brought back into focus. One can walk today across a patch of farmland in Iraq and see nothing more than wheat swaying. But on the satellite screen, beneath that same patch, an outline of a rectangular courtyard emerges, perhaps once a meeting place or a shrine where villagers gathered to honor spirits of river and sky. Consider the ditches of Rabla in distant Slovakia, or the clay urns of Adichanalur in India, sites where archaeologists physically dig into soil to reveal past lives. The AI-detected Mesopotamian sites are different. They slumber beneath untouched earth, their rediscovery happening not by spade but by light, by pixels, by the steady, patient learning of algorithms. Yet they too carry the weight of human presence, the echo of feet, the murmur of voices, the quiet persistence of survival. One site revealed by AI lies along the ancient canals of southern Iraq. Here, the dark traces of irrigation channels form a delicate lattice across the soil, like veins across a leaf. The channels connect to a central mound, a raised platform whose purpose remains uncertain. Was it a small town, supporting farmers whose water-fed crops sustained distant Uruk or Ur? Or was it a ceremonial place, a stage where seasonal rituals honored the gods of flood and harvest? No tablet tells us its name, but the pattern speaks of design, of hands shaping earth, of a community bound by shared purpose. Another pattern, detected near northern Mesopotamia, shows a circle of pits. At first it could be mistaken for natural erosion, but AI traced the circle's symmetry, too precise for chance. Archaeologists now suspect it may have been a sacred site, perhaps a shrine where fire once burned in the night, its glow marking a place of meeting. People may have gathered there at solstice or harvest, offering grain, beer, or lamb to unseen protectors. When the site was abandoned, its pits filled with dust. For millennia the circle lay hidden, until satellites saw what eyes on Earth could not. As the discovery spread, archaeologists find themselves walking between two times. In the present, they walk fields, feeling the sun and dust on their skin, but through screens and algorithms they walk also into the shadows of the past, guided by faint lines carved into earth thousands of years ago. Each trace becomes a door, each mound a threshold. And through these doors, imagination steps into lives long extinguished yet somehow still here. The power of AI in these revelations is not merely detection but connection. A site alone is a shape in soil, but across hundreds of sites, patterns emerge. The spread of farming villages, the reach of trade routes, the rhythm of canals across wide plains, all become clearer. Where once scholars saw only the grand cities of Mesopotamia, they now see networks of life extending across the land, a fabric of small communities woven into the greater story. One might imagine a Neolithic farmer at one of these villages, standing by the riverbank at dawn. His fields stretch before him, watered by a canal he and his neighbors dug. Behind him, mud brick homes cluster in a ring. smoke rising gently from hearths. A small shrine stands at the village's edge, its altar bearing offerings of barley. To him, the site is not extraordinary, it is life itself, the center of survival. Yet thousands of years later, AI gazes down and marks the faint geometry of his world, turning his ordinary into something monumental. The thought itself is humbling, that even the simplest village, forgotten by all records, leaves a mark strong enough for machines orbiting the planet to find. The Earth remembers, even when people forget. There is a strange poetry in this union of ancient and modern. The first writing of Mesopotamia was cuneiform. Marks pressed into clay tablets, recording grain rations, temple offerings, the flow of water. Today, AI makes its own marks. Lines of code, algorithms, sorting millions of pixels, recording again the flow of ancient canals, the presence of ancient courtyards. Across 5,000 years, the medium has changed, but the purpose endures, to make visible the hidden rhythms of human life. The more sites revealed, the deeper the mystery grows. How many thousands still lie unseen? How many temples to unknown gods rest beneath farmlands? How many settlements, never named, carried stories that ended before writing began? Each pattern of Earth is a question, inviting patience. Some will be excavated, their secrets laid bare. Others may never be touched, their outlines fading slowly as wind and water alter the land. Yet through the lens of AI, they are not entirely lost. They remain suspended between absence and presence, between memory and silence. As evening settles over Mesopotamia today, the rivers still flow, farmers still tend fields, children still play, and prayers still rise, though in new forms. Beneath their feet lie thousands of years of buried lives, and above them, in orbit, satellites watch. Their silent gaze, paired with the unblinking patience of algorithms, ensures that even the faintest memory, etched in soil, is not forgotten. The AI-revealed Mesopotamian sites remind us that history is never complete. It waits in the quiet lines of Earth, in the shadows cast by fields, in the small differences of color seen only from above. The past does not vanish, it only sleeps, waiting for eyes, whether human or machine, to notice once more. And so, as you drift through this story, let the thought linger. Beneath the stillness of night, beneath fields and cities, beneath the very ground we walk, countless worlds slumber. Some will never awaken, but some, through patient watching, will rise again, not as ruins of stone and mud, but as stories, as shapes, as whispers of lives who, though gone, have left their mark indelibly upon the earth. The Donia Sacred Holes. In the quiet stretches of the Italian region of Apulia, along the edges of what once were fertile plains, there exists a landscape that seems almost ordinary at first glance. Rolling hills, dotted with patches of olive trees, vineyards, and the soft outlines of distant mountains, stretch under a pale, serene sky. Yet, hidden in this calm and seemingly mundane terrain, is one of the most enigmatic archaeological sites of the Neolithic world, the Donia Sacred Holes. To stand here, at the edge of these plains, is to feel as though you have stepped across the veil of time, into a place where human hands once sought not just to live, but to converse with the cosmos. The Donia Sacred Holes are not monuments in the conventional sense. They do not soar like the pyramids of Egypt, nor are they intricately carved temples, ornate with symbols of gods and kings. Instead, they are simple, yet profoundly mysterious. Thousands of small circular pits, carefully dug into the limestone bedrock, stretch across the landscape in long, precise rows. Their diameter is modest, barely a meter across, yet their presence evokes a quiet awe. The holes seem ordinary, almost humble, but their repetition, their meticulous alignment, hints at something far greater than simple utility. They whisper of ritual, observation, and perhaps an understanding of the world that has been almost lost to time. Archaeologists first stumbled upon the Donia Sacred Holes in the late 20th century, though local legends and the gentle whispers of the land had known their presence for centuries. Surveying the site, researchers noticed patterns that immediately set these holes apart from any known agricultural or defensive structures of the Neolithic period. Unlike the scattered pits dug for storage or simple shelter, these holes were arranged in seemingly deliberate rows, some stretching hundreds of meters. They were often paired or grouped in specific formations, suggesting careful planning, yet no trace of permanent buildings, temples, or walls accompanied them. They existed in isolation, carved directly from the earth, silent markers of human intention. What purpose did these holes serve? Early theories ranged from the practical to the speculative. Could they have been storage pits, perhaps for grain or water? Could they have been post holes for wooden structures long decayed into memory? Yet as excavations deepened and radiocarbon dating refined the timeline, a more intriguing possibility emerged. Many of the holes were dug with a precision that suggested astronomical observation. Their placement aligned with the movement of the sun and moon across the seasons. In some rows, the first light of dawn during the solstices would shine directly into the pits, illuminating them in a fleeting sacred pattern. Others corresponded with the lunar cycles, marking times of ebb and flow that shaped Neolithic life, from planting and harvesting to ritual gatherings and communal celebrations. The people who dug these holes lived in a world where the sky was their calendar, their compass, and their guide. The stars, the phases of the moon, and the daily journey of the sun were not distant phenomena, they were integral to the rhythm of life. In a time before clocks, before written calendars, these holes may have served as markers, keeping time and a silent, enduring dialogue between earth and sky. One can imagine the Neolithic observers, kneeling beside each pit, watching the first light, or the shadows fall, understanding in their own ways the cycles that dictated survival, community, and the sacred mysteries of life. Yet these holes were not purely utilitarian. Their sheer number and the care with which they were dug suggest ritual significance. In the quiet stillness of the Apulian plains, under the glow of moonlight, these pits may have been the stage for ceremonies, offerings, or meditative practices. Perhaps small objects, tokens of devotion, were placed within them, left for spirits or deities that walked alongside human existence in the minds of the Neolithic people. Perhaps smoke or incense rose from some of the pits, carrying prayers into the night sky. There is a tangible sense of intention here, a recognition that the act of digging was as important as the holes themselves, that each circle etched into the limestone was a bridge between human hands and the universe above. Excavations have revealed a fascinating complexity to the site. Some holes contained traces of burnt soil, charred remains, or simple artifacts, though never in abundance. The Neolithic architects of this landscape seem to value presence over permanence, ritual over accumulation. It is as though they were more concerned with the act, the alignment, the observation, than with leaving behind objects for posterity. The holes themselves were the message. They spoke of human curiosity, of reverence for patterns, and of a desire to map one's life against the vastness of time and space. Walking among the rows today, one can sense the rhythm that may have guided these people. The spacing between the holes, the occasional slight deviation in alignment, the orientation to horizon points where the sun or moon would rise and set, these details are whispers of an ancient mind attuned to the natural world. It is easy to imagine groups of villagers, or perhaps specialized observers, gathering at dawn or dusk, performing rituals of timing, planting, or celebration. Perhaps they sang, perhaps they chanted, perhaps the wind itself carried the subtle sounds of their ceremonies across the plain. Time, as we know it, is irrelevant here. What matters is the rhythm, the connection between earth and sky, and the silent pulse of human intention. Modern technology has added layers of insight and wonder. Surveys using satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar have revealed that the holes extend farther than any early explorers could have imagined, creating patterns that are only discernible when viewed from above. Some alignments seem almost mathematical, suggesting knowledge of angles and distances that could guide not only ritual but observation of celestial events. The precision of placement, the scale of organization, raises questions that continue to puzzle archaeologists. How did Neolithic communities achieve such planning without the instruments or mathematics we take for granted today? Was there a priestly class or a specialized group devoted to astronomical observation, or was this knowledge communal, passed down through generations of careful observation? One cannot separate the Daunia sacred holes from the broader cultural context of Neolithic Italy. During this period, communities across the peninsula were transitioning from small, semi-nomadic groups to more settled agricultural villages. The knowledge of seasons, weather patterns, and celestial movements was crucial for survival. Crops depended on timing, animal migrations affected hunting, and the changing moon guided the rhythms of daily life. In this context, the holes are not merely curiosities, they are an embodiment of the Neolithic mind's intricate understanding of its environment. They demonstrate an intelligence both practical and spiritual, a desire to embed human life within the greater tapestry of nature. Yet despite the research and study, much remains unknown. There is no written record, no legend preserved in stone, that tells us precisely why the holes were dug, or what rituals were performed within them. Each pit holds a question, and together they form a silence that stretches across millennia. Some researchers have suggested that the holes may have served multiple purposes over time, perhaps evolving as the community's understanding of astronomy and ritual deepened. Others have speculated on symbolic meanings, connecting the holes to myths of the underworld, to fertility, or to ancestral veneration. The absence of certainty, however, is part of the allure. The Daunia sacred holes are not a puzzle to be solved, they are an experience to be felt, a window into a way of thinking that predates our written history, yet resonates with universal human wonder. Visiting the site today is an exercise in quiet reflection. The wind brushes softly over the limestone, rustling grasses and carrying the scent of earth and stone. Sunlight, shifting through the day, cast shadows that slide across the edges of the holes, revealing their shape and symmetry in a gentle, almost meditative rhythm. Standing in the midst of these rows, it is easy to feel the presence of those who once labored here. Their hands brushing against stone, their eyes lifted toward the sky, one can almost hear the distant echo of chants, the low murmur of voices attuned to the natural cycles around them, the soft, deliberate tapping of tools shaping the land in harmony with the cosmos. In the broader sense, the Dania sacred holes challenge our modern notions of monumental architecture. We often equate greatness with scale, with ornate decoration, or with written records. Yet here is a site that conveys profound meaning through simplicity, through repetition, through subtle alignment with forces both visible and invisible. The holes are markers of human curiosity, patience, and reverence. They are, in a sense, a dialogue with eternity, carved into stone not to endure forever, but to mark the rhythm of life and sky for those who understood their language. As evening falls over Apulia, the landscape softens under a cool, fading light. Shadows stretch and mingle among the holes, and a tranquil hush settles across the plain. Stars begin to emerge, faint at first, then more boldly, as darkness deepens. The Milky Way, a soft river of light, arches above the rows, echoing the patterns below. In this quiet, it is possible to sense the connection that the Neolithic people may have felt. The holes, silent and patient, continue their ancient vigil, aligning with celestial events that will occur long after human voices have faded. They are a testament to the persistence of observation, ritual, and wonder. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is how such subtle, simple marks on the earth can evoke such a profound sense of connection across time. The Dania sacred holes remind us that human curiosity, devotion, and understanding are not measured by the grandeur of stone or the complexity of technology, but by the careful attention to the world around us, the desire to align our lives with the greater forces of nature, and the quiet persistence of thought and action carried across generations. In the end, these holes are more than mere depressions in limestone. They are a meditation, a silent narrative, a link between the Neolithic mind and our own. And so, under the blanket of stars, the plain remains as it was, stretching quietly into the night. Each pit holds its secrets, each alignment whispers a story, and the Dania sacred holes endure, patient and unassuming, awaiting the careful eyes of those who pause to notice, to reflect, and to feel the rhythm of time etched into the very earth. Walking away from the site, the memory of the rows lingers, subtle yet profound, a gentle echo of human wonder, a quiet meditation on the alignment of life and sky, and the enduring mystery of what it truly meant to observe, to ritualize, and to connect with the universe so long ago. The Sekelos, stelae. Along the gentle hillsides of ancient Turkey, near the coast of the Aegean, there lies a small town whose modern streets barely hint at the layers of history beneath them. Amidst the quiet of olive groves, the rustle of wind through cypress trees, and the occasional distant bleat of a goat, one could almost overlook the profound echoes of human expression that linger here. Preserved in a delicate, enduring form, among these whispers of the past, there exists a unique artifact, remarkable not for its size or opulence, but for the subtle, almost fragile bridge it forms between millennia, the Sekelos stelae. It is said to contain the world's oldest complete musical composition, an artifact of human artistry that speaks not only of melody but of life itself. The stele itself is a modest column of marble, upright and unassuming, standing barely taller than a man. Its surface, worn smooth by centuries of exposure and handling, carries an inscription etched with careful precision. The text, both lyrics and musical notation, flows in simple yet deliberate lines. It is the voice of an individual, Sekelos, as the name reveals, addressed to the world with a message as personal as it is universal, the brief, precious nature of life, and the need to embrace joy while it lasts. Despite the passage of time, the words retain their clarity, and the musical notation, though ancient and foreign to modern eyes, is legible enough for scholars to reconstruct its melody. In this quiet, unassuming piece of stone, one hears not just history, but the lingering pulse of human emotion and creativity. The stele dates from somewhere around the 1st century CE, a time when the region now known as Turkey was a crossroads of cultures. Greek, Roman, and Anatolian influences mingled, leaving traces in art, language, and ritual. Music, like language, was central to daily life. It accompanied religious ceremonies, public gatherings, private reflection, and the simplest moments of leisure. Yet despite music's ubiquity, little has survived in a form complete enough for us to experience. What makes the Sekelos stele extraordinary is that it transcends mere notation. It is a window into the soundscape of antiquity, a melody inscribed by human hands for human ears, intended to be performed, heard, and felt. It is a song from a time long before recordings, speakers, or even written descriptions of sound could preserve tone or rhythm. It survived simply because it was etched into marble, enduring through centuries of change, neglect, and rediscovery. The inscription is brief, yet each word carries weight. It begins with an encouragement, almost a gentle admonition, to live fully, to enjoy the present, and to allow music and joy to accompany the fleeting hours. The text is lyrical, philosophical, and intimate, reflecting a worldview in which life's brevity is acknowledged not with despair, but with mindful celebration. It is a reminder that even in the distant past, humans sought ways to honor time, to express emotion, and to leave something lasting, however small, for those who might come after. The accompanying musical notation is equally simple and elegant. Lines, dots, and symbols indicate pitch and duration, forming a melody that, when reconstructed, is haunting in its clarity, gentle in its cadence, and timeless in its appeal. One can imagine the sound, soft and lilting, rising in the quiet air of a courtyard, a home, or a temple. Archaeologists first encountered the stele in the 19th century, its significance slowly coming to light as scholars painstakingly compared the notation to known systems of ancient Greek music. The process of interpretation has been meticulous, requiring an understanding not just of musical theory, but of cultural context, linguistic nuances, and the subtleties of notation that predate modern staff lines. Over decades, researchers have recreated the melody, performing it with instruments reconstructed from ancient designs, lyres, aulos, flutes, and simple percussion. Listening to the music today, one hears the echo of lives long past, perhaps a family gathered to share a meal, friends accompanying a celebration, or an individual meditating on the passage of time. The melody is spare, yet each note carries a weight and intention that transcends centuries, connecting the modern listener to the human spirit of the first century. The life of Seikilos himself remains shrouded in mystery. We know his name, carved alongside the song, yet nothing more of his daily existence survives. Was he a musician, a poet, a philosopher, or simply a person who sought to leave a message of joy to those who would follow? The stele's inscription is both personal and universal, suggesting a consciousness aware of life's fragility, yet eager to celebrate its pleasures. This delicate balance of reflection and delight is perhaps what has allowed the Seikilos stele to endure as a symbol, not just of ancient music, but of human awareness, introspection, and the capacity for expression that transcends time. The song does not shout, it does not demand attention. Instead, it whispers across centuries, a quiet reminder that life, in all its fleeting beauty, is worth embracing. The reconstruction of the melody offers its own lessons. Ancient Greek music was modal rather than tonal in the way modern Western music is. The intervals, rhythms, and microtones convey emotion in ways that differ from contemporary expectations, yet they are profoundly moving. The melody of Seikilos is simple, almost meditative, yet it carries subtle variations in pitch and rhythm that suggest nuance, expression, and human feeling. It is a song meant to be experienced with attentiveness, not in passing. One imagines the delicate hand of a musician plucking a lyre string, the soft breath through a flute, and the attentive ear of listeners present in the moment, absorbing the transient beauty of sound. In a world without amplification or recording, music demanded presence, attention, and engagement. Each performance was unique, ephemeral, yet shared, bridging human experience in real time. The stele's text also speaks to mortality, a theme central to much of ancient philosophy. It begins with an invocation of the temporal nature of life, that all moments are fleeting, that human existence is brief, and that sorrow or worry should not dominate one's attention. In this brevity lies an opportunity to live fully, to enjoy companionship, to sing, to celebrate, to be mindful. Music in this context is not just an art form, but a vehicle for philosophy, a means of embodying the recognition of life's impermanence. Every note and syllable becomes a gentle affirmation. Life is passing, yet each moment is precious, and each expression, whether through melody, word, or gesture, is a way to honor that passage. Modern performances of the Seikilos stele have drawn attention not only from musicologists, but from philosophers, historians, and curious listeners worldwide. In a contemporary world filled with recordings, digital reproduction, and constant auditory stimulation, the stele reminds us of simplicity, intimacy, and intentionality in sound. Listening to it is akin to stepping back in time, imagining the warm stone under fingertips, the subtle scent of a courtyard, the hush of attentive listeners. The melody invites calm reflection, a kind of temporal meditation, bridging the divide between then and now. It is a song meant for shared experience, yet also for solitary contemplation, as each note lingers in the air, in memory, and in the mind's ear, long after it has faded. The stele itself was originally a grave marker, a memorial that combined both text and music. This dual function, the commemoration of a life alongside a melodic expression, highlights the cultural significance of music in daily and ritual life. Music was not an accessory, it was central to human experience, intertwined with memory, emotion, and the understanding of life's trajectory. The placement of a song upon a stelo underscores the belief that sound, like stone, could endure beyond the limits of flesh, conveying essence and sentiment across time. It was a conscious act of preservation, an acknowledgement that human expression, while ephemeral in the moment, could be rendered enduring through careful, thoughtful inscription. The process of interpreting ancient Greek musical notation reveals the intellectual sophistication of the culture. Notes were not merely arbitrary, they indicated pitch, duration, and sometimes ornamentation. Rhythm was conveyed through patterns of symbols, and the structure of melody often mirrored poetic meters. The Sekkilos stele embodies this synthesis, poetry, philosophy, and music intertwined in a single artifact. For the modern observer, there is a quiet joy in deciphering these symbols, reconstructing a song that had not been heard for nearly 2,000 years. There is also a sense of humility, recognizing the continuity of human creativity, the shared impulse to express, to communicate, and to celebrate life's fleeting beauty. Walking today along the modern streets near the ancient site, one can almost imagine the presence of the stele in its original context. A column of white marble stands, carved with the gentle lines of notation and text, reflecting sunlight, capturing shadow, and enduring quietly. The olive groves sway in the wind, echoing the subtle rhythms of the melody, and the distant coastline suggests the vast eternal horizon that the ancient musician may have gazed upon. It is easy to feel a kinship with Sekkilos, to sense the same awareness of time's passage, the same desire to leave behind a fragment of self, however small, in a world that continues beyond one lifetime. The enduring charm of the Sekkilos stele lies in its combination of simplicity and profundity. It is not grandiose or monumental, it is intimate, personal, yet universal. It conveys the recognition of mortality, the call to savor each moment, and the joy of musical expression, all carved into a slender piece of marble. In doing so, it transcends the centuries, speaking directly to the human heart, reminding us that life, though fleeting, is rich with opportunity for creativity, reflection, and connection. The melody itself, soft, deliberate, and serene, carries this message in a form that requires no translation. It is a gift from the past, an echo of joy, a whisper of enduring human presence. Even in modern performances, whether on reconstructed lyres, flutes, or other period instruments, the song retains its gentle power. Its melody flows with a natural ease, never rushed, never imposing. The notes follow one another with subtle variation, a delicate interplay that suggests both spontaneity and careful design. Listeners are invited to breathe with the music, to attune themselves to its rhythm, and to consider their own place in time. In this quiet engagement, one finds a bridge between two millennia. The hands that etched the stele, the breath that might have accompanied its first performance, and the present-day ears and hearts that receive it anew. The connection is intimate, transcendent, and quietly profound. As dusk falls over the hills, casting long shadows across the olive groves and the remnants of ancient settlements, one can reflect on the remarkable endurance of this piece of human expression. In a world where so much is transient, the Sekkilos stele endures as a testament to the human need for expression, understanding, and remembrance. It invites us to pause, to listen, and to recognize the fleeting beauty of each day. The melody, soft and meditative, is more than music. It is a philosophical statement, an emotional expression, and a bridge to a time long past. It reminds us that life is fleeting, but beauty, thought, and feeling, once expressed, can endure far beyond the limitations of our own existence. Walking away from the stele, the memory of its gentle melody lingers. Each note, each word etched into the marble, carries the resonance of centuries, a soft echo of human awareness, and a quiet invitation to embrace life fully. The Sekkilos stele remains a reminder that even the simplest gestures of creativity, an inscription, a song, a message to the future, can endure, bridging the gap between past and present, guiding us to pause, reflect, and feel the timeless pulse of humanity. In the stillness of the hills, amidst the wind and the whisper of trees, the stele continues its quiet vigil, a melody for the ages, a celebration of life, and a testament to the enduring human spirit. The Sutton Hoo Helmet. In the gentle rolling landscapes of eastern England, near the winding waters of the River Deben, there lies a place that seems ordinary to the unobservant eye. Fields stretch softly into the distance, dotted with patches of woodland, hedgerows, and the quiet contours of villages that have existed for centuries. Yet beneath this tranquil veneer, hidden for more than 1,000 years, lay a secret of extraordinary human ambition, artistry, and ritual: the Sutton Hoo burial site. Among the treasures unearthed here, none captures the imagination quite like the Sutton Hoo helmet, a masterpiece of Anglo-Saxon craftsmanship, a relic of royalty, and a silent witness to a world that has long passed into memory. The Sutton Hoo helmet is not merely a piece of armor, it is a symbol, a statement of power, identity, and belief. Unlike the practical helmets worn into battle, This helmet transcends utility. It is ceremonial, ornate, and exquisitely designed, intended to convey prestige and authority, perhaps even to bridge the mortal and the divine. Its surface is embossed with intricate patterns, images of warriors, animals, and interlacing designs that speak of skill, imagination, and ritual knowledge. Every curve, rivet, and gold-accented detail reflects the hands of craftsmen who understood not only metalworking, but storytelling, symbolism, and the subtle ways in which objects could communicate meaning across generations. The helmet was discovered in 1939 during the excavation of a burial mound at Sutton Hoo, a site that had lain untouched and unknown beneath layers of earth for centuries. Archaeologists were initially captivated by the scale of the mound itself, a subtle rise in the landscape that hinted at the presence of something monumental beneath. As they carefully removed the soil, they revealed a ship-shaped grave, its timbers long decayed but outlined in the sand, filled with artifacts that had belonged to a high-ranking individual, perhaps a king. Among these treasures, the helmet was the crown jewel, literally and figuratively, a piece that seemed to capture the essence of an entire culture, frozen in time. The helmet itself is made of iron, covered with thin sheets of tinned bronze, and decorated with exquisite gold accents. Its design is both functional and symbolic. The iron core provides strength, the decorative overlays display artistry, and the overall form, including a pronounced nose guard and protective cheek plates, suggests both intimidation and reverence. Faces of warriors and animals appear across its surface, their forms intertwined in patterns of incredible complexity. Some images depict mythical beasts, serpents and birds, while others suggest scenes of combat or hunting. These designs are more than decoration. They are visual narratives, encoding stories, beliefs, and ideals of courage, loyalty, and divine favor. Reconstructing the helmet after its discovery was a meticulous process. The burial had preserved it only partially. Centuries of decay had left it in fragments, each piece delicate and fragile. Archaeologists and conservators spent countless hours piecing together the fragments, carefully examining the rivets, the curvature of the metal, and the patterns of ornamentation. The result was breathtaking, a helmet that restored not only the physical form, but also the dignity and presence intended by its makers. To look upon it is to sense the weight of history, the presence of the individual who once wore it, and the vision of the craftsman who created it with deliberate care. The context of the burial adds depth to the helmet's story. Sutton Hoo was more than a grave, it was a carefully constructed ritual space. The ship itself, though no longer complete, suggests a journey, a passage from the world of the living to the realm beyond. It is a symbolic voyage, carrying both the body of the deceased and the objects deemed necessary for honor, protection, and status in the afterlife. The helmet, placed prominently among these treasures, served as both protection and symbol, perhaps ensuring that the individual would be recognized as a leader, a warrior, and a figure of significance even beyond death. Every detail, the placement of the artifacts, the alignment of the grave, the choice of materials, reflects careful intention, ritual knowledge, and cultural sophistication. The Anglo-Saxon world, to which Sutton Hoo belonged, valued such symbolism deeply. Leadership was not merely a matter of inheritance, it was reinforced through ritual, display, and the demonstration of personal and familial power. Objects like the Sutton Hoo helmet were central to this process. They communicated status, invoked protection from the divine, and embodied the ideals of courage and loyalty. The imagery on the helmet connects the wearer to myth and legend, to ancestors and gods, and to the wider community that recognized and revered these symbols. It was a conversation in metal and gold, one that spoke across generations, linking the past, present, and imagined afterlife. Modern analysis of the helmet reveals even greater sophistication. Metallurgists and historians have noted the complex layering of materials, the precision of the rivets, and the careful use of tinned bronze to highlight patterns. Each element reflects knowledge of material properties, an understanding of how light and shadow would play across the surface, and a deliberate orchestration of aesthetic and symbolic effect. The helmet was designed to impress, to awe, and to convey power. Yet it was also a functional object, capable of protecting its wearer in combat if necessary. This duality, practicality intertwined with artistry, is characteristic of Anglo-Saxon craftsmanship and thought, where the physical and symbolic worlds were inseparable. The imagery carved into the helmet is particularly intriguing. Faces of warriors, some human, some mythic, peer out from the metal, their expressions both fierce and serene. Interwoven serpents, birds of prey, and fantastical beasts suggest stories known to the culture, perhaps relating to heroism, divine favor, or cosmic order. Scholars have debated the meanings of these motifs for decades, considering parallels in literature, oral tradition, and iconography from other parts of Europe and the Mediterranean. While certainty eludes us, the patterns themselves communicate power, vigilance, and reverence. To see them is to glimpse the worldview of a society that held narrative, ritual, and artistry in equal esteem. The helmet was not alone in the burial. Other treasures included ornate shields, weapons, jewelry, and coins, each selected with care and placed to reflect both status and ritual purpose. The entire assemblage paints a picture of a society deeply conscious of hierarchy, belief, and the afterlife. The ship burial, reminiscent of Scandinavian traditions yet uniquely Anglo-Saxon, reinforces the notion of transition, a journey from life to death, from temporal power to enduring memory. In this context, the helmet functions not only as armor, but as a signifier of identity, a protector, and a symbol of continuity, bridging the mortal and spiritual realms. One can imagine the moment the helmet was originally worn, its weight settling upon the head of a figure of authority. Perhaps it was donned during ceremonies, feasts, or moments of martial preparation. The wearer would have been aware of the symbolism etched into every surface, the gaze of mythic figures and ancestral spirits engraved in bronze and gold. The helmet would have communicated power and status to all who saw it, while also connecting the individual to cultural ideals, moral expectations, and divine oversight. In life and in death, it functioned as both tool and talisman, artifact and story, merging the practical with the transcendent. The discovery of the Sutton Hoo helmet has had profound implications for our understanding of early medieval England. Prior to its unearthing, much of the Anglo-Saxon period was thought to be modest, lacking in artistic sophistication. The helmet, along with the associated burial treasures, challenges this perception. It demonstrates a culture capable of immense technical skill, refined aesthetic sensibilities, and complex symbolic thought. It reveals a society attuned to ritual, hierarchy, and the subtle interplay of material, meaning, and memory. For modern observers, it serves as a bridge to a world long vanished, yet still resonant, offering insight into human creativity, ambition, and belief. Walking today near the site of Sutton Hoo, one can sense the quiet power of the landscape. The rolling fields and gentle river contours hide their ancient secrets beneath grass and soil, yet they whisper of craftsmanship, leadership, and ritual. The helmet, reconstructed and displayed in a museum, conveys this story to modern eyes. Its form, details, and ornamentation continue to inspire awe and reflection. Viewers are reminded not only of the artistry and power of the Anglo-Saxons but also of the universal human desire to leave a mark upon the world, to assert identity, and to honor both life and legacy. The helmet's enduring fascination lies in its ability to communicate across time. It is not merely a piece of metal. It is a narrative, a meditation, a record of human intent, and a symbol of cultural continuity. Its presence reminds us that objects, carefully crafted and thoughtfully inscribed, can transcend mortality, conveying messages, values, and aesthetics to generations yet unborn. In its silent strength, the Sutton Hoo helmet bridges centuries, allowing us to imagine the individual who wore it, the artisans who created it, and the society that revered it. It embodies courage, artistry, and belief, a tangible echo of a world that continues to speak to us, softly, patiently, and profoundly. Even today, as visitors gaze upon the helmet, they can sense its dual nature, both protective and expressive, both functional and symbolic. It invites contemplation, reflection, and imagination. One can envision the ancient wearer, standing with the weight of authority and responsibility upon their head, surrounded by attendants, warriors, and courtiers, each aware of the power conveyed by this remarkable object. The interlacing designs, the embossed figures, the careful placement of every detail, all combine to create a work that communicates not just visually, but emotionally and spiritually. The helmet is a dialogue in bronze, gold, and iron, bridging centuries, connecting human minds across time, and reminding us of the enduring power of creativity, ritual, and memory. As the sun sets over the gentle hills of Suffolk, casting long shadows across fields and woodlands, it is possible to feel the presence of the past lingering in the quiet. The Sutton Hoo helmet, preserved and restored, continues its silent vigil, an enduring testament to skill, ambition, and the human desire for meaning. In its curves, rivets, and embossed images, one finds both story and artistry, a meditation on mortality, power, and expression. It reminds us that even as centuries pass, objects crafted with care, intention, and beauty can speak across time, connecting hearts and minds with those who lived long ago. The helmet endures, a silent guardian, a storyteller, and a bridge to a world that, while long vanished, still resonates with the quiet pulse of human presence. The Nok Terracotta Figures. In the warm, expansive plains of central Nigeria, where the earth carries a reddish hue and the horizon stretches into distant, gentle hills, lies a quiet, enduring mystery. Among the fertile soils, scattered villages, and the occasional whisper of the wind through tall grasses, archaeologists and explorers have uncovered traces of a civilization that existed over 2,000 years ago. This culture, known to us as the Nok, left behind artifacts of astonishing artistry, enduring in the soil long after their makers had vanished. Most remarkable among these relics are the Nok Terracotta Figures, clay sculptures that are at once mysterious, captivating, and profoundly human. To encounter a Nok figure is to reach across centuries and feel the subtle presence of a culture whose voice is nearly silent, yet whose artistic expression speaks clearly to those who listen. The Nok culture flourished between roughly 1000 BCE and 300 CE in what is now central Nigeria. Little is known about their daily lives, their social structures, or the rituals that governed their world. Yet the terracotta figures they crafted offer a vivid window into their imagination, their values, and their technical skill. The figures range in size, from small, handheld statuettes to imposing sculptures over 1 meter tall. They often take human form, carefully modeled to convey posture, gesture, and personality, and are sometimes adorned with intricate hairstyles, jewelry, or ritualistic marks. Each figure feels purposeful, as if it was designed not merely to exist but to communicate, to represent, and to endure. The discovery of these figures began in the 1920s, quite accidentally, as miners digging for tin and other minerals unearthed fragments of clay. Over time, more systematic excavations revealed hundreds of figures, many in pieces, others remarkably intact. Archaeologists marveled at the sophistication of the workmanship. Hollow bodies carefully constructed to prevent cracking during firing, delicately incised details, and sometimes traces of pigment that hinted at vibrant original coloring. These details speak to a culture with a deep appreciation for form, for human representation, and perhaps for the spiritual or ritual significance of their creations. Even in fragments, the figures exude a sense of presence, as though the artists intended for them to be witnesses across time. Faces are a defining feature of the Nok sculptures. Almond-shaped eyes, high cheekbones, broad noses, and full lips create expressions that are serene, contemplative, or authoritative. Some faces suggest calmness, others a quiet intensity, hinting at roles, social status, or perhaps spiritual significance. Hairstyles are elaborate, with braided patterns, ridges, or sculpted adornments that may indicate identity, tribal affiliation, or ritual importance. Jewelry appears on many figures, necklaces, bracelets, and headpieces, further emphasizing individuality and social recognition. In their careful modeling, each figure communicates a story, a fragment of a life, or a representation of the human condition as perceived by the Nok people. The purpose of these terracotta figures has long been debated by scholars. Many were found in graves, suggesting a funerary or commemorative function. They may have been intended to accompany the dead, providing protection or status in the afterlife, or to mediate between the living and spiritual realms. Others may have been used in domestic or communal rituals, marking sacred sites, celebrating ancestors, or acting as symbols of identity. Some figures appear in seated poses, others standing, some holding objects, all suggestive of intentional symbolism and narrative. While certainty eludes us, this ambiguity adds to their allure, encouraging contemplation and imaginative engagement with a culture that left so few written records. The craftsmanship of the Nok figures is particularly striking. Hollow construction, careful shaping, and high-quality firing techniques demonstrate knowledge of materials and skillful manipulation of clay. Surface details, including incisions, smooth finishing, and subtle modeling, reveal not only aesthetic sensibilities but also technical mastery. In some cases, traces of pigment suggest that color was applied, adding another layer of expression and meaning. The figures are both artistic and technical achievements, reflecting a society capable of innovation, observation, and creative expression. They speak of artisans who understood not just the form, but the emotional and symbolic resonance of their work. Scale plays an important role in the impact of these figures. Smaller figures may have served as personal or household items, while larger sculptures likely had communal, ceremonial, or spiritual significance. Their presence, size, and detail suggest a society that valued both individual and collective identity, recognizing the interplay between personal expression and social structure. The stylistic coherence across figures indicates shared cultural norms, yet each sculpture maintains unique characteristics, demonstrating a balance between conformity and individuality that is subtle and sophisticated. One of the most compelling qualities of the Nok terracottas is their expressive power. Unlike purely decorative or utilitarian objects, these figures communicate presence and emotion. Faces convey dignity, serenity, or vigilance. Postures suggest contemplation, authority, or ritual importance. The figures encourage slow, reflective observation, inviting viewers to imagine the lives, roles, and spiritual beliefs of the people they represent. In their quiet presence, they foster a sense of connection across centuries, reminding us that human empathy and creativity transcend time. The terracottas also provide insights into the social and spiritual life of the Nok culture. Hairstyles, adornments, and gestures may indicate hierarchy, social role, or participation in rituals. Some scholars suggest the figures represent ancestors, deities, or idealized human forms, bridging the mortal and spiritual worlds. Their careful construction and symbolic detail indicate that they were not mere decoration, they were vessels of meaning, carrying social, spiritual, and cultural messages across generations. Each figure is a record, a story, and a work of art intertwined, embodying both tangible skill and intangible significance. The rediscovery and study of Nok figures reshaped perceptions of early West African societies. For many decades, sub-Saharan Africa was overlooked in narratives of ancient artistic and technological achievement. The sophistication, expressiveness, and scale of Nok terracottas challenged assumptions about early African civilizations, revealing a culture capable of both technical innovation and aesthetic brilliance. They stand as evidence that artistry, ritual, and cultural sophistication flourished across diverse environments, even in times and places where written records are absent. The figures, silent yet eloquent, demand recognition and reflection. The fragility of the terracottas adds to their poignancy. Many figures were discovered in fragments, shattered by centuries of burial or excavation. Conservators painstakingly pieced them together, restoring faces, gestures, and motifs to their original presence. Even in partial form, the figures convey emotion, authority, and human presence. In this restoration, modern observers participate in the continuation of the Nok legacy, bridging the gap between past and present, and allowing the artistry, symbolism, and humanity of these creations to speak across centuries. The figure's hollow construction, attention to proportion, and modeling of human anatomy suggest careful observation and study. Every curve, angle, and detail reflects intention and skill. The artisans of Nok understood how to create lasting, expressive forms, capable of conveying individuality, social significance, and possibly spiritual resonance. This duality, technical precision combined with emotive artistry, demonstrates the richness of Nok culture and its enduring impact on our understanding of human creativity. Today, standing before a Nok terracotta figure, one can sense a profound stillness. Faces seem to hold quiet stories, gestures suggest unseen rituals, and the careful details invite reflection on human presence, social structure, and spiritual practice. The figures connect us to a distant world, reminding us that even cultures without written records expressed identity, ritual, and artistry in enduring, tangible ways. They are both witnesses and participants, silent yet eloquent, bridging the gap between the present and a world that flourished over 2,000 years ago. The Nok terracottas endure as a testament to human creativity, cultural memory, and expressive power. They remind us that art is not merely decoration, but a vessel for thought, identity, and spiritual significance. In their faces, postures, and adornments, one senses not only skill but intention, a desire to communicate, to commemorate, and to be remembered. Even as centuries pass, the figures retain their presence, their quiet dignity, and their ability to evoke wonder, reflection, and empathy. In the warm red earth landscapes of Nigeria, these sculptures continue to speak, patient and enduring, whispering across the centuries to all who encounter them, inviting reflection, imagination, and a deep sense of connection with a world long gone, yet never forgotten. The Gunditjmara Stone Aquaculture System. In the gentle undulating landscapes of southwestern Victoria, Australia, where the black soil stretches across wide plains and the low hills meet winding rivers, there exists a network of stones quietly testifying to the ingenuity of people who lived thousands of years ago. For over 6 millennia, the Gunditjmara people of this region developed an extraordinary system, a harmonious marriage of human knowledge and environmental understanding, creating one of the oldest known aquaculture systems in the world. Today, these stone fish traps, meticulously arranged along the creeks and wetlands, whisper the story of a people deeply attuned to water, fish, and the rhythms of the land. The Gunditjmara Stone Aquaculture System is remarkable, not simply for its age, which stretches back at least 6,600 years, but for the sophisticated understanding of hydrology, fish behavior, and environmental engineering it demonstrates. Along the rivers and wetlands, long channels and walls of stone were constructed to guide, trap, and harvest eels and other freshwater fish. The stones, arranged in precise patterns, created channels, weirs, and ponds, allowing water to flow in measured ways, concentrating fish in areas where they could be caught sustainably. This system is not haphazard. It is a deliberate, intelligent manipulation of the natural environment, reflecting a culture that understood long-term ecological balance and careful stewardship. The ingenuity of the Gunditjmara people lies in the combination of knowledge, skill, and patience. Constructing these stone channels required observation of fish behavior across seasons, knowledge of flood patterns, and the ability to work with the land without destabilizing it. Stones were placed with precision, forming walls that could withstand seasonal changes in water flow. yet small enough to allow some water and smaller fish to pass through, ensuring ecological continuity. Each trap, pond, and channel was designed for sustainability, demonstrating an awareness of resource management that would resonate with modern environmental science. The system was built primarily for the collection of short-finned eels, a vital food source for the Gunditjmara people. Eels, migrating in annual cycles, provided reliable nutrition and could be stored for long periods when smoked or preserved. The aquaculture system, therefore, was not simply a convenience, it was a cornerstone of community survival, culture, and organization. It allowed the Gunditjmara to live in permanent or semi-permanent settlements, challenging the stereotype that Aboriginal Australians were only nomadic hunter-gatherers. In fact, this innovation supported a sophisticated, sedentary lifestyle that relied on observation, labor, and ecological understanding. Archaeological investigations of the Gunditjmara stone channels reveal a landscape carefully managed over millennia. Large networks of stone walls, channels, and ponds extend for kilometers, linking wetlands and rivers into an integrated system. These constructions are often submerged or partially submerged, revealing their design and adaptability to seasonal variations in water flow. Some channels are narrow, funneling fish into small holding ponds, while others form broader collection areas. The precision, scale, and adaptability of these stoneworks underscore the deep knowledge the Gunditjmara had of hydrology, fish migration, and sustainable harvesting practices. The cultural significance of the Gunditjmara aquaculture system extends beyond its practical function. These structures are embedded in the social and spiritual life of the people, connecting them to country, ancestors, and law. Each stone, carefully placed and maintained, is a testament to knowledge passed down through generations, encoded in practice, observation, and ritual. Working the channels and managing the eels was not simply a matter of survival, it was a continuation of cultural heritage, a living expression of community, identity, and relationship with the land. The system embodies the interconnectedness of human, environment, and spirituality, illustrating a worldview in which each action resonates with the past, present, and future. Modern study of the Gunditjmara stone channels has revealed both their complexity and their resilience. Many channels remain intact despite thousands of years of weather, flooding, and human activity. Researchers and archaeologists have documented the meticulous arrangement of stones, noting the careful angling of channels, the spacing of walls, and the strategic placement of holding ponds. These features reveal a sophisticated understanding of engineering principles, including water pressure, flow rate, and seasonal variation. It is remarkable that this knowledge was applied without written records, calculators, or modern tools, relying instead on observation, experience, and communal knowledge passed orally and practically across generations. The discovery of the aquaculture system has challenged assumptions about ancient societies worldwide. While many ancient civilizations are known for monumental architecture, the Gunditjmara people achieved monumental ingenuity through ecological design. Their stone channels are a testament to innovation, careful observation, and sustainable management. They demonstrate that human ingenuity is not confined to the construction of buildings or monuments, but also flourishes in harmonizing human activity with natural systems. The Gunditjmara system represents a form of engineering that is adaptive, responsive, and deeply attuned to environmental rhythms. Visiting the region today, one can trace the outlines of stone walls emerging from wetlands, pools of water reflecting the sky, and channels guiding water across the plains. There is a quiet, almost meditative beauty in the landscape, an echo of countless generations who labored, observed, and maintained this intricate system. Imagining the Gunditjmara people tending the channels, monitoring water levels, capturing eels, and preserving them for the community, one senses the rhythm of life intricately tied to nature's patterns. These stones are not silent, they carry the weight of human intention, ingenuity, and connection to country. The Gunditjmara aquaculture system is also a living reminder of sustainable practices. In a modern context, where overfishing, ecological disruption, and environmental degradation are common, the precision, sustainability, and resilience of this ancient system are striking. The careful design ensured that fish populations were not depleted, that habitats remained viable, and that human needs were met without compromising the integrity of the ecosystem. It is an enduring lesson in balance, foresight, and respect for natural systems, a principle that resonates even today. Archaeologists continue to study the system, uncovering new channels, ponds, and connections, expanding our understanding of the ingenuity of the Gunditjmara people. Radiocarbon dating, hydrological mapping, and ethnographic studies reveal the depth of planning and observation involved in these structures. The findings emphasize that the Gunditjmara were not simply subsistence-based, they were planners, engineers, and stewards of the land, blending practical knowledge with cultural expression in a way that ensured survival, prosperity, and social cohesion over millennia. The cultural legacy of the Gunditjmara people remains vibrant, even as the landscape has changed over time, and modern settlements have developed nearby. The knowledge, stories, and practices of aquaculture persist through oral history, community knowledge, and engagement with the environment. The stone channels are tangible reminders of a culture deeply connected to place, demonstrating that human innovation and environmental stewardship are intertwined with identity, spirituality, and collective memory. The Gunditjmara Stone Aquaculture System endures as a symbol of human ingenuity and resilience. Each stone, carefully positioned, each channel and pond, thoughtfully engineered, communicates a deep understanding of ecological balance, social organization, and cultural continuity. These stones do not merely mark the past, they engage the present, inviting reflection, admiration, and quiet contemplation. Standing among the channels, one can imagine the slow, deliberate work of shaping the land, the observation of eels migrating through the wetlands, and the rhythms of a community whose knowledge of their environment was profound, practical, and profoundly human. In the quiet expanse of southwestern Victoria, the stone aquaculture system persists, patient and enduring, a bridge between past and present. The Gunditjmara people created not only a method of sustenance, but also a living legacy of innovation, observation, and ecological harmony. Across centuries, their ingenuity speaks softly yet clearly, reminding us that human creativity is not limited to monuments of stone or written records, but thrives wherever knowledge, patience, and respect for nature meet. The channels, ponds, and walls, though silent, carry the enduring heartbeat of a people attuned to water, life, and the land itself, whispering their story to all who take the time to notice, to contemplate, and to understand. The Harappa Seals. In the fertile plains of the Indus River, stretching across what is now Pakistan, there once thrived a civilization so sophisticated, so meticulously organized, that its cities, streets, and drainage systems still astonish archaeologists today. This was the Indus Valley Civilization, flourishing around 2600 to 1900 BCE, a society that managed to build sprawling urban centers, maintain trade networks across vast distances, and develop systems of writing that remain largely undeciphered. Among its most enigmatic artifacts are the Harappa Seals, small, intricately carved objects that whisper stories of commerce, belief, and communication, yet resist full understanding even after a century of study. The Harappa Seals are typically small squares or rectangles of steatite, a soft stone that could be carved with precision and then baked to harden. Each seal bears inscriptions in the still unread Indus script, alongside finely detailed images of animals, humans, and symbolic motifs. Bulls, unicorn-like creatures, elephants, and tigers appear frequently, their forms stylized yet instantly recognizable. Human figures, sometimes engaged in ritual postures or holding objects, are depicted with careful attention to proportion and gesture. These seals were used as stamps, impressions in clay that identified ownership, authenticated goods, or served symbolic purposes. Yet the precise meanings of the inscriptions and images remain a mystery. Excavations at sites such as Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and Lothal have revealed hundreds of these seals, many in excellent condition. The craftsmanship is remarkable, the tiny inscriptions are precise, and the animal depictions often convey movement, texture, and presence. Some seals feature intricate geometric patterns or elaborate headdresses, suggesting cultural significance beyond mere utility. Even today, each seal invites wonder, drawing observers into the imagination of a civilization whose people mastered urban planning, metallurgy, and craft, yet left a written language that continues to elude interpretation. The purpose of the Harappa seals appears multifaceted. Archaeologists believe many were used in trade, pressed into clay to mark goods or containers, ensuring authenticity or origin. The symbols and animal motifs might have functioned as clan or personal identifiers, communicating identity across merchants, artisans, and communities. Some seals seem to carry ritual or religious meaning, possibly used in ceremonies or as talismans. Yet, because the Indus script remains unreadable, every interpretation is cautious, speculative. In this uncertainty lies part of the fascination. The seals speak across millennia, but only partially, leaving space for imagination, curiosity, and wonder. The Indus script itself, carved meticulously onto each seal, is a series of signs that remain undeciphered despite the best efforts of linguists, cryptographers, and historians. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, no bilingual texts exist to unlock its meaning. Signs appear consistently, often in sequences of 3 to 5 characters, sometimes longer, yet their function, phonetic, symbolic, or mnemonic, remains unknown. Each seal, therefore, is both a record and a puzzle, preserving information that modern eyes can see but cannot fully read. It is as though the Harappans left messages for future generations, trusting that someday someone might understand, yet leaving their meaning tantalizingly out of reach. The images carved alongside the script add further depth. Animals often dominate the seals, rendered with an attention to detail that captures both form and spirit. The so-called unicorn appears frequently, a creature with a single prominent horn, stylized yet enigmatic. Its purpose unclear, perhaps a clan symbol, a deity, or a mythic representation. Bulls, elephants, and tigers recur, suggesting reverence, practical significance, or symbolic meaning. Human figures appear less frequently, sometimes depicted in ritual stances, possibly performing ceremonies or representing authority. These images, combined with the undeciphered script, create a layered record of life, belief, and identity in one of the ancient world's most advanced civilizations. Crafting a Harappa seal was a meticulous process. Steatite, a soft stone, was carved using fine tools, often with remarkable precision, given the small size of the seals. Once carved, they were fired or baked to harden the stone, preserving the intricate designs for millennia. Some seals also bear traces of color or pigment, suggesting that decoration may have added meaning or aesthetic appeal. The effort invested in creating these seals reflects their importance within Indus society, whether for trade, ritual, identity, or a combination of purposes. Each seal is a product of careful observation, skill, and cultural intention, a tiny window into a civilization of remarkable sophistication. The placement and discovery of the seals provide further insight into their use. Many were found in urban centers, warehouses, and workshops, implying connections to commerce and administration. Others appear in domestic contexts, perhaps used in household rituals, personal identification, or ceremonial purposes. The diversity of locations and motifs suggests that seals were not merely functional objects, they were integrated into daily life, symbolic practice, and social organization. In this, they echo the broader complexity of the Indus Valley civilization, a society capable of advanced urban planning, standardized weights and measures, and intricate craft, yet leaving behind records that remain partly silent. The Harappa seals also highlight the interconnectedness of the Indus world. Similar designs and symbols appear across distant sites, from Harappa in the north to Lothal in Gujarat, India. This consistency indicates communication, shared cultural or religious motifs, and standardized practices over a vast area. The seals were part of a broader system, integrating trade, administration, and social identity across hundreds of kilometers. In this, they serve as both functional tools and cultural markers, bridging communities, conveying meaning, and asserting continuity over time. Despite centuries of study, the full story of the Harappa seals remains elusive. Every inscription, every carefully carved animal, every tiny human figure poses questions. What did these symbols mean to those who used them? How were they understood in their own time? Were they purely practical, or did they also carry spiritual weight, connecting people to ancestors, gods, or cosmic order? The mystery persists, inviting reflection and imagination, drawing modern observers into a dialogue with a civilization long vanished, yet enduringly present in its artistry and ingenuity. There is a quiet poetry in the seals, a sense of precision and care, that transcends their practical purpose. Each one conveys human attention, observation, and intention. The animals are alive with form and presence, the inscriptions deliberate and careful, the overall composition balanced and meaningful. They are not mere tools, they are enduring expressions of a people who understood aesthetics, symbolism, and the power of communication. In the delicate curves of a bull's horn, the stance of a human figure, or the arrangement of signs, one senses the subtle heartbeat of the Indus world. The discovery and preservation of these seals have reshaped modern understanding of ancient South Asia. They remind us that the Indus Valley civilization was a society of remarkable complexity, capable of urban planning, economic organization, artistic innovation, and symbolic communication. The seals are tangible evidence of a civilization that, despite lacking monumental inscriptions or widely understood written records, achieved a high level of sophistication in craft, administration, and symbolic thought. They are a silent testament to the capacity of human societies to create, organize, and communicate across generations. Standing before a Harappa seal today, whether in a museum or imagined within the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, one feels a connection across time. Faces, animals, and symbols carved into steatite invite reflection, curiosity, and meditation. They remind us of the ingenuity, care, and intelligence of those who lived along the Indus River thousands of years ago. The seals endure as both practical tools and profound expressions of human thought, bridging past and present, offering a glimpse into lives, beliefs, and communities that remain partly shrouded in mystery. Ultimately, the Harappa seals are more than artifacts. They are windows into a civilization that continues to challenge, inspire, and fascinate. Each seal is a tiny monument to human creativity, observation, and the enduring desire to communicate, even across millennia. The inscriptions may be unreadable, the symbols enigmatic, yet the precision, artistry, and care evident in each object speak clearly to the human spirit. In the silent plains of the Indus, in the ancient cities now resting beneath the earth, these small stones continue to whisper their story, patient and enduring, inviting all who encounter them to pause, contemplate, and marvel at the ingenuity of a people whose echoes persist across time. The tomb of the Lord of Sipán. In the arid valleys of northern Peru, where the desert stretches toward distant mountains and the wind whispers across the sands, there lies a discovery that reshaped our understanding of ancient South American civilizations. Buried for over 1,000 years beneath layers of earth, the tomb of the Lord of Sipán was found in the Moche region, revealing a royal burial so lavish and intricate that it captivated the world. Here, gold, silver, and precious jewels were interwoven with ceramics, textiles, and human remains, telling the story of a society with remarkable artistry, social hierarchy, and spiritual depth. The Moche civilization thrived along the northern coast of Peru from around 100 to 800 CE. Unlike other cultures of their time, the Moche left no written records, yet their legacy speaks through monumental architecture, finely crafted ceramics, and intricate metalwork. The Lord of Sipán's tomb, discovered in 1987, provided the most complete insight into Moche elite society, their rituals, and their beliefs surrounding death and the afterlife. Unlike many burials that had been looted over centuries, this tomb remained largely intact, allowing archaeologists to see firsthand the extraordinary care and symbolism invested in this royal interment. At the heart of the tomb lay the remains of the Lord of Sipán himself, adorned with elaborate ornaments. Gold and silver headdresses, necklaces, earrings, and ceremonial pendants marked his status, while textiles and ceremonial garments suggested refinement and ritual importance. But the tomb was not solely for the Lord. Attendants, warriors, and offerings were placed alongside him, forming a carefully organized arrangement that reflected both hierarchy and cosmology. Each artifact, each positioning, revealed a narrative of Moche culture, emphasizing the interconnectedness of power, spirituality, and craftsmanship. The Moche were master artisans, and nowhere is this more evident than in the metalwork found in the tomb. Gold and silver were shaped into intricate depictions of animals, deities, and ceremonial symbols. Earrings with intricate filigree, necklaces with symbolic pendants, and headdresses depicting the sun or jaguar motifs demonstrated technical skill and a deep symbolic language. These objects were not merely decorative, they carried meaning, representing authority, divine connection, and protective power. In the silent stillness of the tomb, the metal glimmered softly, a testament to the hands that shaped it and the beliefs that imbued it with significance. Ceramics in the tomb provided another layer of understanding. Vessels depicting scenes of ritual, sacrifice, and daily life offered visual stories of Moche society. Warriors, priests, and deities were rendered in clay with remarkable detail, capturing posture, expression, and action. These pieces complemented the metalwork, forming a rich tapestry of symbolic and practical artistry. The combination of gold, ceramics, textiles, and human remains illustrated a culture that celebrated life, honored death, and invested deeply in ritual practice. One of the most striking features of the Lord of Sipán's burial was the careful arrangement of individuals within the tomb. Attendants and warriors were placed in positions suggesting guardianship or service, reflecting both loyalty in life and ritual function in death. Each placement conveyed meaning: a body positioned with ceremonial objects, a warrior with weaponry, an attendant with offerings. This deliberate organization suggested a cosmological or spiritual framework, hinting at beliefs in the afterlife, protection, and the continuity of status beyond death. The tomb was a microcosm of Moche society, frozen in time, yet whispering stories to those who took the time to observe. The discovery of the tomb had profound implications for archaeology and the study of pre-Columbian societies. Before its excavation, much of what was known about the Moche came from looted sites, fragmented ceramics, and scattered artifacts. The tomb of the Lord of Sipán offered an unprecedented glimpse into elite burial practices, social hierarchy, and craftsmanship. It revealed a culture that valued artistry, symbolism, and meticulous ritual preparation, challenging assumptions about ancient South American civilizations and their sophistication. Excavating the tomb required patience, precision, and care. Archaeologists meticulously documented each artifact, noting its position, orientation, and relationship to other objects. Layers of soil, textiles, and ceremonial items were carefully removed, revealing the tomb's structure and the richness of its contents. The process itself became a dialogue with the past, as each discovery offered insight into the beliefs, status, and daily life of the Moche elite. The tomb also illuminated Moche cosmology. Many artifacts reflected the importance of animals in Moche mythology. Jaguars, snakes, birds, and sea creatures appeared in gold, silver, and ceramics. These motifs likely represented spiritual power, protection, and connections to the natural and supernatural worlds. The placement of items suggested ritualized symbolism, connecting the earthly realm to the divine, life to death, and the individual to the community and cosmos. In this way, the tomb was more than a burial, it was a carefully orchestrated expression of identity, belief, and cosmic understanding. Today, the Lord of Sipán's treasures continue to awe scholars, visitors, and enthusiasts. Museums and exhibitions display the gold headdresses, intricate jewelry, and ceremonial artifacts, preserving both beauty and context. Yet the true power of the tomb lies not only in its material wealth, but in the insight it provides into the Mo-che worldview, social organization, and artistic mastery. Each object, each placement, each symbol invites reflection, imagination, and reverence for a civilization whose echoes survive across centuries. The tomb of the Lord of Sipán reminds us that death, ritual, and artistry are universal expressions of human culture. Through gold, textiles, ceramics, and careful arrangement, the Mo-che created a space that honored the individual, reinforced societal roles, and connected the earthly and spiritual worlds. In the silent, dimly lit chambers of the tomb, one can imagine the hands that placed each object, the care with which rituals were observed, and the belief that status, protection, and meaning extended beyond mortal life. As we reflect on this extraordinary discovery, the tomb stands as a testament to human ingenuity, devotion, and the enduring power of cultural expression. It whispers across time, inviting curiosity and wonder, allowing us to glimpse the lives, beliefs, and artistry of a people long gone but never forgotten. The Bactrian Gold Hoard. In the remote valleys of northern Afghanistan, where the mountains meet the plains and the wind carries the echoes of ancient travelers, a remarkable treasure lay hidden for over 2,000 years. Buried beneath the earth, untouched by plunderers for centuries, the Bactrian Gold Hoard represents one of the most extraordinary discoveries of the Central Asian steppes. It is a collection of intricate gold artifacts, jewelry, and ceremonial objects, spanning 6 tombs, each offering a glimpse into a world of wealth, artistry, and cultural exchange that flourished in this crossroads of civilizations. The Bactrian region, situated between the Hindu Kush Mountains and the Amu Darya River, was a vibrant center of trade, culture, and conquest in antiquity. It connected empires, peoples, and ideas, stretching from the Mediterranean to India and beyond. The hoard, discovered in 1978 by local farmers in what is now northern Afghanistan, revealed more than 20,000 gold objects, astonishingly preserved despite centuries of shifting empires, wars, and migrations. The find transformed understanding of Central Asian art, technology, and social structure, revealing a society capable of extraordinary craftsmanship and rich symbolic expression. The treasures of the Bactrian Gold Hoard include crowns, necklaces, bracelets, earrings, ceremonial vessels, and animal figurines, each crafted with meticulous attention to detail. Goldsmiths of the time demonstrated remarkable skill, shaping the precious metal into delicate filigree, engraved patterns, and complex reliefs. Animal motifs, lions, bulls, elephants, and fantastical creatures appear frequently, often intertwined with geometric designs or ceremonial symbolism. Some pieces incorporate gemstones, colored glass, or turquoise, adding depth and vibrancy to the gleaming gold. Each artifact was carefully made, not only to impress but to convey status, belief, and cultural connection. The 6 tombs in which the hoard was found were part of a burial complex belonging to elite individuals, likely rulers, nobles, or high-ranking warriors. Excavations revealed human remains alongside the treasures, with the placement of objects suggesting careful ritual practice. Some tombs contained skeletal remains adorned with crowns and jewelry. Others had ceremonial vessels arranged around the deceased. The positioning of each object indicated a deep understanding of symbolism, spirituality, and social hierarchy. These were not mere grave goods. They were an extension of identity, authority, and cosmic order, carefully curated for the journey into the afterlife. Gold in Bactrian society was more than wealth, it was a medium of power, connection, and artistry. The hoard demonstrates a sophisticated knowledge of metallurgy, including techniques such as repoussé, granulation, and filigree. Craftsmen could render gold into delicate, flexible forms while maintaining durability, enabling the creation of jewelry that was both functional and deeply symbolic. Crowns are adorned with sun motifs, stylized animals, and intricate patterns, reflecting both aesthetic sensibilities and spiritual significance. Necklaces, bracelets, and earrings indicate the importance of personal adornment in expressing status and identity. Animal imagery dominates much of the Bactrian Gold Hoard, reflecting cultural, spiritual, and symbolic importance. Lions, with open jaws and fierce expressions, appear as protectors and symbols of authority. Bulls, representing strength and fertility, are depicted in dynamic postures. Elephants, exotic and powerful, suggest connections with India and trade networks spanning the region. Some figurines combine animal and human elements, creating mythological beings that speak to the imagination and ritual life of the Bactrian elite. These depictions are not random. Each form carries meaning, creating a symbolic language that communicates power, divinity, and societal values across the centuries. The hoard also reveals the breadth of cultural influences that converged in Bactria. Central Asia was a crossroads where Hellenistic, Persian, Indian, and steppe traditions met and mingled. Artistic styles from these diverse regions appear intertwined in the artifacts, from Greco-Roman depictions of deities to steppe-inspired animal motifs. Jewelry and ceremonial objects blend techniques, forms, and symbolism, illustrating a sophisticated aesthetic sensibility capable of integrating multiple cultural currents. In this way, the Bactrian gold hoard embodies both local identity and the cosmopolitan nature of ancient Central Asia. The discovery of the hoard was as dramatic as its contents. Local farmers digging in the fertile plains near the Oxus River stumbled upon fragments of gold. Archaeologists rushed to the site, uncovering tombs undisturbed by looters, a rarity in a region often exposed to conquest and pillage. The intact nature of the find allowed scholars to study the arrangement of objects, the burial practices, and the artistic techniques in unprecedented detail. Every crown, vessel, and figurine revealed insights into the social hierarchy, ritual practice, and artistic mastery of the Bactrian elites. The ceremonial significance of many artifacts is evident in their design and placement. Vessels with intricate engravings may have held offerings, liquids, or incense during ritual ceremonies. Crowns and diadems reflect authority and divine connection, often decorated with sun, animal, or cosmic motifs. Jewelry worn by the deceased not only denoted rank but likely served protective or symbolic functions in the journey to the afterlife. In this way, the tombs and their treasures functioned as both personal expression and social statement, reinforcing identity, power, and cosmology simultaneously. The Bactrian gold hoard also highlights the sophistication of trade and communication in the ancient world. Many materials, gold, gemstones, and precious metals may have originated from distant regions, revealing networks of exchange that spanned hundreds of kilometers. Techniques and stylistic influences point to cultural interaction with Hellenistic kingdoms, Persian satrapies, and Indian polities. This interconnectedness demonstrates that Bactria was not isolated, but a vibrant hub of commerce, art, and cultural exchange, where wealth, knowledge, and aesthetics flowed freely across political and geographic boundaries. The scale of the hoard is staggering. Thousands of individual objects, each with precise craftsmanship, suggest immense resources, skilled artisans, and a societal structure capable of organizing labor, materials, and ritual practice. The 6 tombs, each containing a unique combination of artifacts, human remains, and ceremonial objects, form a cohesive narrative of elite life, belief, and burial custom. Through these tombs, archaeologists gain insight into hierarchy, governance, ritual, and the deep human desire to leave a lasting mark on the world. Excavation and preservation of the Bactrian gold hoard posed challenges due to both political instability and environmental conditions. Yet, careful study revealed technical mastery in every piece. Gold was hammered, engraved, and molded with precision. Filigree patterns are delicate yet resilient. Granulated dots of gold are uniform and precise. Vessels show symmetrical designs. Animal figurines display accurate anatomy and expressive postures, and jewelry fits comfortably as if worn by the living. The objects communicate both technical knowledge and aesthetic sensibility, a balance of functionality, symbolism, and artistry. The hoard also offers insight into the spiritual worldview of the Bactrian elite. Animal symbols, cosmic motifs, and ceremonial objects suggest beliefs in divine protection, the journey of the soul, and the integration of the natural and supernatural worlds. Burials were carefully arranged to honor status, provide for the afterlife, and ensure ritual propriety. The richness of the artifacts, combined with their placement, underscores a culture that valued symbolism, ritual, and the continuity of social and cosmic order. Today, the Bactrian gold hoard continues to fascinate scholars, collectors, and enthusiasts worldwide. Exhibitions and museums display its treasures, yet the true wonder lies in imagining the hands that shaped each piece, the rituals that accompanied their use, and the vibrant society that valued artistry, ceremony, and status. These objects are not mere decoration. They are stories frozen in gold, voices from the past, speaking across millennia, inviting us to contemplate lives, beliefs, and artistry far removed from our own, yet deeply human in expression. The Bactrian gold hoard endures as a testament to human creativity, ingenuity, and the desire to connect with both the material and spiritual worlds. It reminds us that civilizations, even in the remote steppes of Central Asia, possessed sophistication, aesthetic sensibility, and complex social structures. Through gold, ritual, and symbolism, the people of Bactria communicated status, belief, and artistry, leaving a legacy that continues to awe and inspire. As we reflect on the treasures of Bactria, the tombs, the crowns, the vessels, and the figurines form a silent, eloquent narrative. They speak of power and prestige, of ritual and belief, of artistry and craftsmanship. They remind us that even in regions far from the great cities of the ancient world, human ingenuity, creativity, and desire for expression flourished. The hoard invites contemplation, curiosity, and quiet wonder, a reminder that history is full of hidden treasures waiting patiently for discovery. The Bactrian gold hoard is more than a collection of artifacts. It is a bridge across time, connecting the present to a distant, vibrant world. Each crown, each animal figurine, each engraved vessel carries the heartbeat of a civilization that valued beauty, ritual, and social order. In the quiet reflection of their presence, one can imagine the lives, ceremonies, and beliefs of the Bactrian elite, feeling a sense of connection to a people who lived, dreamed, and created long before our time. Through the Bactrian gold hoard, we glimpse the complexity, richness, and sophistication of a society that thrived on the steppes of Central Asia. It is a legacy of artistry, wealth, and spiritual depth, preserved in gold and stone, enduring despite centuries of change. As the artifacts glimmer in museum halls or in our imagination, they invite us to pause, wonder, and marvel at the achievements of those who came before. And so, as we leave these ancient treasures behind, their silent stories linger in the mind, echoing across time and reminding us of the ingenuity, mystery, and beauty of civilizations long past. Each artifact, each hidden corner of history continues to whisper its secrets, waiting for those who pause, observe, and imagine. May the wonders of the past stay with you as you rest, and may curiosity and awe guide your dreams until we meet again on another journey through the echoes of history.